go ahead and get started with this Tri-County Court meeting. It's Wednesday, the 24th of October. It's 10 a.m. We happen to be meeting at the South Gilliam County Emergency Services Building. We do have an agenda. I guess the first item on the agenda would be approval of it. Is there anything that we might have as far as an addition or a change to what's on here? Okay. Not hearing anything, I think we'll go ahead and start with the introductions. I'm Gilliam County Judge Steve Schaefer to my left.
Rob Ordway, Wheeler County Commissioner.
Okay.
Gary Thompson, Sherman County Judge.
Tom McCoy, Sherman County Commissioner.
Lynn Marley, Wheeler County Judge.
Caleb on Barstool, Sherman County Administrative Assistant.
Mary Dyer, Gilliam County Recorder.
Sandy McKay, Gilliam County Court Administrator.
And in the audience, just sitting down, you're next.
Judge Les Remark, Rock Creek.
Max Stinchfield, Times Journal.
Lori Anderson, Catherine Griner, City of Connie. Sherry Wilkins.
Okay, so we'll move forward with this. First item that we have on our agenda is the Tri-County Court governance structure. You know, one of the things that I want to relay here, this is really not a decision-making group. Really, it's an information gathering group. I think it gives it a good opportunity for the three smallest counties to get together and have a discussion. Again, if you took our three counties, put us together, we're still the smallest county in the state. I think it's extremely important for us to communicate with each other, work together, and in creating, you know, I guess what might be a thought process that is collaborated. One of the only ways that we can get that accomplished is to actually set at a table and work towards discussions or have discussions that may allow us to work towards that. Again, there are no decisions that are made here. It's strictly informational. And yeah, but also that leads to a few issues that we have. Today I'm looking at, you know, quorums to two of the courts. You know, and whenever you get into that, there are public meeting laws that have to be adhered to, and I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of those. When we do that, I think part of the structure that we need to think about is this a meeting of the Gilliam County Court hosting the other entities? How we want to structure this and what the thought process is. I really want to kind of maybe turn this over to Sandy. You know, these are some of the questions that consistently come specifically from some of the people here in the audience, and I think we really need to, you know, kind of clarify what some of those issues are and what have been brought forward. Sandy?
Sure, I think you know, the big issues are just making sure that we're meeting the you know, public meeting laws. So as far as publicizing the meetings, making sure that proper notices are being done, and then also on the record keeping side, you know, who's responsible for keeping the official minutes of this meeting, and making sure that those are kept and tracked and taken care of properly. And so I think it's, you know, just a matter of making sure that everybody's kind of on the same page as to who has those responsibilities. Is it each of the three counties' individual responsibility for these meetings, or is it perhaps the county that's hosting it? Is it their responsibility that turn, and next time when it rotates to a different county, it's their responsibility to make sure that notices are put out and proper minutes are kept and all those sorts of things?
What have we done in the past?
It's sort of been left up to each county to kind of do what they felt like doing. I don't know this really been uniform.
So from what I've gathered, we've all basically been taking notes on either paper or on a laptop, and then we've all been recording with our little handheld recorders, and then we make a CD or keep it on the computer or however each group wants to keep that. But from what I've seen in the past and from talking from previous on Sherman County side, that's how we've been doing it. We don't write minutes because there are no decision making. Anything that happens, it's
right.
it's just you know, discussions, and we've never really done minutes before, even though there technically is a quorum. We, with the ORS, you either have, it states, and then I actually have it if you need to read it out. You need to do one or the other. You can do both, but you need to either have a media record of some sort, whether it's a video or audio, or you need to have written minutes.
Mhm.
And so that's the way we've just, from what I can tell, and the same thing with,
Well, we don't really have
We're talking
anybody to
with Leanne.
approve the minutes very quickly, at least.
sorry, what was that?
We don't have anybody that can approve the minutes
No.
very quickly. That's one of the difficulties, because we don't meet again for 3 months.
Right, right.
Plus, this group is probably the only group in the state of Oregon that 3 counties meet together and discuss issues. I don't think it's done anywhere in the state of Oregon.
Well, that is true, other than, and most recently, in the last, I think in the last 6 months, I've had lots of conversations with Umatilla and Morrow are beginning this process
Oh,
now.
are they?
Yeah, they felt that it was, what we were doing was, kind of a good thing, and so they started it. So I don't know what their process is at this time. We've got, I haven't really talked to, had that conversation with them on what it is that they're doing, but I think it's going to be something that begins happening more and more. And I wasn't really sure if, we all end up at AOC at times, and obviously we end up with a quorum there. I don't know what process, of course, that's a completely different organization, so.
I'm trying to think what, AOC has got something in law, I don't know what it is, that allows us all to meet in one location.
Right.
As a quorum,
Right.
without going through all the minute taking and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's, all of that is done by the AOC organization. I mean, they end up doing it, but it doesn't, it doesn't really come back to our individual courts to be posted. But again, I'm not really sure how that would play out. I guess in many of the conversations that I've had with both Sandy and Leanne over this, I almost feel like if we had the process being to where the host county made sure that the notices were put out and all of those things that we're doing now.
Yeah, we've got to follow that.
Yeah,
part.
I just wasn't sure
As far
about.
as minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we've been doing that all along, though.
Yeah, I know it, but
Well,
as far.
at least one county's been taking minutes.
Yeah.
But,
So, and
but there's nobody that can visibly make no decisions. Where do you approve the minutes? Or
Yeah.
do you
Yeah.
even
do we
approve?
even need to prove?
I don't
We're not making any decisions.
I don't think that we need to probably approve the minutes and.
I've never seen the minutes of the
Yeah.
Tri-County Court meeting.
Well,
We don't have minutes.
Yeah.
We just
I
have
never-
notes
Notes.
and audio
Notes
files.
for the discussion.
For public record, if
If
somebody
wants
does,
to see
if somebody
it,
does
they're available.
request.
And
Yeah.
then they can get a
Yeah.
copy of the recording, whatever they need.
Yep.
Yeah, I will say that today's Tri-County Court meeting, which is the first time that I'm aware of it being done, we are doing a video recording of it, which we will post on the Gilliam County website for anybody to view. I guess view.
That's
It's-
why my back's to the camera.
Yeah, that's why you're back to the camera. Right?
I didn't see that till they run over and turned it on.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'd have had your back to the camera, right? Okay.
If it is.
Again, it's one of those things that I guess as we begin posting what this meeting is going to be, there seems to be an awful lot of requests for any documentation, any information that's going to be handed out during the meeting being pre-delivered because of this being a meeting that we're going to discuss a certain topic. This particular meeting, I didn't gather anything. I didn't, I figured that really what this is all about is discussion. With the agenda that we put together, each one of these items not necessarily is around a document that we're handing out. It's all about, some services that we may be having some issues with. And again, when it comes to the point that we're talking about concerns, that we're collaborating, we're working together to see whatever, the solution may be for each one of us. So that was the reasoning for this particular agenda, and no documentation, no other documents coming out with it. I don't know what you guys would like. I mean, there could be some things that might have come out of the AOC conversation. AOC sent us a lot of things. We each, I think, were sent information that, talking about the county roads program. And, I, again, weighed whether I was going to print that out, or not, so.
I wonder if Les has some ideas. He's kind of an expert in this area. Are you happy with the way we're conducting the Tri-County Court meetings? Do you have any problem with it?
Commissioner, for the record, Les Ruark, I appreciate the reference. However, I don't consider myself an expert. I simply consider myself truly an interested person who's somewhat familiar, as Mike Smith and Mike MacArthur, who have just entered the room, certainly are also. I have a number of suggestions and concerns. I really wasn't prepared, though, believe it or not, to put them on the table today, because I think you're the responsible parties here that ought to be aware of what I think you're already aware of my being aware of. And you need to be putting those matters before yourselves and discussing them. I would say, though, bottom line, that there are 3 governing bodies in this room today. And the moment you meet as a governing body, you're subject to Chapter 192, all of the provisions of that chapter. If there are written materials provided to ahead of the meeting or at the meeting, they need to be made readily accessible to the extent that they can reasonably be made that. And if not immediately at this time, that access needs to be provided afterwards. That's all I'm asking for and have asked for previously, is that, one, the agenda and the notice of the meetings be made available as they are. 2, that there be a record made that reflects the conversations and discussions that you guys enter into. Now, you may not be deliberating towards a decision, but you are bringing forth on the table the detail of all sorts of matters that you end up deciding on. And I think as such, it doesn't hurt for you to make a record of that discussion and that conversation. And so essentially, to answer your question, that's kind of where I'm coming from.
It seems to me from what you just said that we need a website, a Tri-County Court's website, where we can
That's
post
certainly one way you can approach it.
anything that we're going to, just any written material ahead of the meeting, and possibly a record. I mean, what you're recording maybe could be posted on that website. Could somebody generate a Tri-County Court website?
Well, I could just go on the old county website and pick it up.
Yeah, and that's, I think, some of what, we're talking about here, and what Les has just made the comment on. There isn't going to be any decisions made here, so consequently it goes back to our county courts. We have the discussion at that time. If there's any documentation and information that would come, it surely would come out at that time. That's kind of.
But if we were going to have a material available before the meeting, there'd almost have to be a place where they could look. And so we'd almost need something like a Tri-County Court website where people could go to before the meeting and see what if there was any materials that were going to be passed out.
This agenda and the list of the agenda.
I think we put ours on our website. We
put all of our notices on ours. And I would say that I think that, rather than creating a new website that somebody's going to have to maintain and be in charge of, each county already has websites that these things can be posted to. It's just a matter of who's responsible for making sure that happens.
And so people would know there was one place that they could look.
Right, so.
I mean, people, the general public might hear about a meeting, but they might not know which county was going to host it.
Well, if we put it on all 3 of our counties,
So that would be one way to do
we
it.
can do that.
Judge Schaefer
Create a
may,
new page for something that's specific.
Judge Schaefer may
It
make
doesn't-
an additional observation.
Yes.
I don't want to argue with what you've stated on the record here today in terms of how you feel there is no decision-making involved. But I would like to point out that, let's say the three courts seriously consider, as I've heard they are going to eventually, filling the gap or the void, so to speak, that's been created by the Mid-Columbia Council of Governments dissolution. And you're discussing, supposedly for informational purposes, how you could do that, what kind of structure might be involved, which, to be honest with you, I had kind of thought that's what today's agenda item had to do with, but since Sandy's since clarified that it had to do more with what we're talking about now. But what I'm getting to is you're building a record in that type of a discussion and conversation that leads to helping you guys individually, as the three courts you are, deliberate and decide on that matter. So I think it's really important that you not just consider that type of conversation to be a quote-unquote informational session. It isn't. You're actually beginning the process of deliberating towards what you want to see this group become. And I think you need to build that record carefully so that you not only, I'm not trying to say that I'm opposing what that end result, I kind of support it. But at the same time, it needs to be done so that you have that record building in place to support it. And that's what I'm trying to ensure happens here, because there are other matters that you guys collectively are talking about, informationally wise, that fit into that same mode, that same aspect that I'm talking about here. There's a couple more on today's agenda item.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
So I'm just thinking you need to consider that. I think it's great that you guys are meeting collectively, as Judge Thompson referenced, that essentially it's one of the few that are doing that. There are a couple of other ones, the Portland area down in southern Oregon also. But, geez, I think you can take advantage of that role and create a record that allows you to do that. So that's where I'm coming from.
Can I add too, that the city of Condon has committee meetings. They have no decision-making power, we don't have a quorum, but what we do is we take notes and they make recommendations. And that is captured in notes. And granted, the law states that you can have either video or audio or minutes. It's nice to have that piece of paper to take to your court for the full discussion of what you're talking about, because I agree with Les, it's really important. And it's building on your decisions, hopefully the recommendations coming out of here, you all sitting talking about what you're going to do collectively to go there. So our minutes are we call them notes from our committee meetings, are very brief. If they say anything in exact, it's just, hey, this is the recommendation. They're very brief though. But at least you have a record of it.
Well, we've been keeping record.
yeah, that is happening.
But,
Right. I think,
Closer than yours.
yeah. I mean, I agree with what Catherine has just offered there. I think the real difference, I'll get to just from what Catherine is talking about, what we really are is most of her committee meetings really don't have a quorum of the city council sitting there, whereas this we do have a quorum of those people there. Lori?
That's
you
what I
have
was
that
going to say, that you've got quorums represented here.
And so that's where it gets a little bit difficult. And I can't say that I disagree with Les and what he had to say. Also, it's just, it's the dynamics of being able to put all of it together based on, one county being the entity that takes care of it. And he's absolutely right, the discussion of whether it's the trying to fill the void from Mid-Columbia Council of Governments. It's something that as I build the agenda, I see a lot of that, the need for it. But I know that, there's not a whole lot of support in that, and even with my commissioners. But again, it's one of those that Les is right. That probably will be a topic of conversation today. And are we beginning to build the foundation of something right here? And if we are, then by all means, we should have good notes being taken and posted in a proper way.
The issue I have is if each county posts their own notes, chances are, in fact, I can almost guarantee it, that the minutes are going to be different.
Correct.
It's all in the interpretation a lot of
I would
times.
suggest the hosting committee be in charge, the hosting county be in charge of the notes for that meeting. And then that way you don't have that issue, because that could rewrite, that could be
Yeah.
an issue.
And then give them to the other two counties.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
So
then
they're
again,
all posted the
do we,
same.
do we approve the, because now they become a legal document, do we approve them at each one of our county courts?
Right,
or-
they-
No,
Just
no.
like
Right,
I
they don't
said,
have to be
Come back when
minutes.
this body got together.
Right, they don't have to be actual
Notes.
minutes, they could just be meeting notes.
Okay.
Meeting
They don't
notes.
have to be
We
approved,
change
it
the
could
name.
just be notes.
Yeah, I like the
put
word
on a
notes to
website.
distinguish them.
You're right.
We're not trying to cover everything.
So is that what you're saying, Les? Because kind of what I got out of what you're saying is if we begin building something, then, I mean, you know, the discussion of a council of governments, and let's use that as an example, and we begin the conversation here, are notes going to be acceptable?
Well, as I understand the provisions of 192 and what Sandy has suggested, I think just keeping a record, and a lot of bodies have entitled the meeting notes, would be what you're probably needing to do at this point. And I'd certainly agree with Lori and Catherine that essentially the host county that for each meeting needs to be the one responsible for doing that
Yeah.
and posting it.
Yeah.
And then maybe have the host county court approve the minutes, so they could be done at the next meeting?
No, we wouldn't.
Again,
We wouldn't notice.
Wouldn't need to be approved.
They wouldn't need to be-
Notes,
yeah.
You can just, the
Yeah.
notes taken, you can just put them on our website or
Okay, so
whatever we
it's just-
decide to do.
And that would certainly change, obviously, if you were to in fact become a quote-unquote tri-county court
Yeah.
as another body.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything further that we might want to discuss in this?
Could I ask one question?
Sure.
Before we
Yeah.
go on? Given that Mike MacArthur has joined us, I would really value any perspective. If the chair wishes to allow for it, then he might have to offer on this.
Yeah. Judge?
Well, I think it's been, every base has been covered here. I think you guys have the idea. I think because you have quorums here, that you do have some responsibility to, at least in your own jurisdiction, post some sort of record of the meeting that took place. But as it's been also pointed out, you're not officially anything, you're gathering information. So, but if you do start to consider action, I think it's true that you are on the brink of deliberation. And so,
Correct.
just to be safe and to be good stewards of public policy and public process, I think you should be letting the people know what's going on through some sort of information system that you, whatever works the best. I think having it posted on your own websites works for the time being, but you might want to look at something more formal as you begin to talk about more actions together.
Okay. So I'm not really sure whether this would be creating an action within us, but, if we're choosing to have the host county be the entity
That's a
that
decision we have to
to
do.
take
We're not
notes.
supposed to-
Yeah, we're not supposed to make any decisions, so I guess it's, take back to your own counties or your own courts, and have a discussion and the next meeting that we have. Or we can let those people communicate.
Just, yeah,
Okay.
if
And
you
then-
guys just let the administrators know, then we can
Right.
know how we're gonna move forward.
Yeah. Okay, do we have anything further in that? No, okay, so we'll move on now into building code inspection services. So I believe it was a week ago, Friday, I was on I think it was, I had the two of you on there also, conference call, of which Mark Long, with Building Codes Division, let us know that it was time for us to begin making a decision on what it was that we were going to do, or they were going to be pulling the temporary office out of the Dalles and moving it to their permanent office that exists in Pendleton. During this conversation, or what really led up to this conference call, was the city of the Dalles had expressed interest in having a building official that would allow for them to do building code inspections. I guess in updating kind of consensus, I think, after the entire conference call, was that the city, or that the county of Wasco would come back with a proposal to the 3 counties again that brought up them taking over the building codes program.
See, from the way I took this, the city of Dallas couldn't do it, can't do it, but because it has to go through the county, so it would have to be the Wasco County would have to do it, right? In order to get these reserves is really what they're looking at, $3-4 million that are sitting in reserves. In order for the city of the Dalles to receive any of those reserves, all 4 of the counties have to sign off on the city of Dallas being, is that, am I?
Well, yeah, or, you know, even if Wasco County were to take it over, it would
We
be,
would have to
we'd
sign.
have to sign off going to Wasco County.
My understanding of it is the city of Dallas couldn't do it. So they would contract, the city of Dallas would contract with Wasco County.
Yeah,
And then
that's
we
how,
go to Wasco County and the city would administer. But there was an issue about the reserves and how much is there in which county, and how much each county has in those reserves. I haven't heard they were gonna try to figure out something there, and I haven't heard anything back on that.
Mark Long really didn't want to go into that.
Yeah,
Because
well,
it means a lot of work for them trying to figure out which county got how many dollars.
Well, that's the huge advantage of reconstructing a unit comprising the 4 counties. You wouldn't have to split them up. The unit that's writing building codes for the 4 counties would get all of it.
well, yes and no. I mean, each one of the counties, Tom, would have to sign off their
Well, they'd have to
portion
sign
of
off,
it, yeah.
but it would be, it wouldn't have to be split up. We'd just say, whatever our share of the reserves is, we're allocating it to the new entity.
Right.
And that would simplify the thing. It also is our great hammer in making sure that we're treated fairly in this, because we would really, they have to get us to sign off in order to resolve this reserve issue.
Right, and one of the things that Wasco County was, if they were the ones who ended up doing it, kind of requested on the phone, was that they were going to have a building and a location which would require some of those funds to remodel or build or put the program together. And so that's going to be, you know, really one of the requests that would be coming towards the counties that have the reserves to utilize those funds for that. Also, whatever would be left over after that, there's still the discussion about utilizing the permit process, which would be the same price for everybody, but then a transportation costs, which would be much higher going to Mitchell than it would be doing something in Dalles, of which, you know, they would pull out of the reserves that that county has and tell that county.
Because that was Wasco County's plan, and I'm dead set against that.
Exactly, well, that's the point, that one is still the thing that is on the
I mean, still
table.
bringing that up.
Still bringing that up and still
In that
pushing
case,
for that.
It's not gonna fly.
If this, what building is the state using? If they pack up and move to Pendleton, then why
It's the city of the,
why do they have to build a building or remodel a building
Yeah.
or use that building?
Right, well, what they ended up doing was making space for them within their
Within the
public
state
works,
office.
you know, within the Wasco County's public works offices that they have down there. So they moved some people that normally planning in an office there, moved them and crowded them up and
My
put the state in
suggestion
there.
is that we form a 4-county group, put the headquarters in Fossil and charge Wasco County.
That works for me.
That's the unfairness. It just depends on which town actually happens to get the headquarters.
Yeah.
Correct.
And if Fossil got it, then it'd be great for us out in this area, and if the Dalles gets it, they just can't do that. Building codes has never done that.
Right, and I agree with you, Commissioner. Thank you for taking that stance.
Well, I had a good long
No.
discussion, as Lynn knows, with Wasco County at a McCall meeting, where I discussed that view fairly strongly.
Yeah, Judge?
A little update. I checked on the legislation this morning.
Oh, okay.
So Senator Johnson's asked for a second opinion
Mhm.
on the opinion that Mark Long asked for, and so often those opinions rest on how you ask the question.
Yes.
So I'm sure it was asked in a different way.
Yeah.
So it really, it hinges on whether it's constitutional, and I believe that if it turns out not to be a constitutional requirement, that the legislature can fix it, and I think League of Oregon Cities is very fired up about this, is my understanding.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard, Kathleen, from
I haven't.
Aaron
A
Doyle.
building,
Aaron,
building
yeah.
official requirement, is that what you're talking about?
This notion that you have to have an employee be responsible, and you can't contract it out.
Okay.
I mean, it's a horrible precedent for lots of things that are contracted out, and they want to keep going that way. So Senator Johnson, who's got a law degree, doesn't believe that that opinion is correct, and so asked for another opinion. And so if it turns out that it's not constitutional, I think you should look forward to seeing legislation.
Yeah, I think so too. And I felt really comfortable. I didn't have to look at the most recent that had come out. I did have a long conversation with Mark Long, though, about it. Of course, his opinion was completely the opposite, and I agree. I think it was the way that Director Long asked the question as to getting the opinion from the Attorney General, Department of Justice. So,
Is there any precedent, Mike, for charging different building code fees depending on the location of the
I've never heard of it. I've never heard of that happening.
Judge,
yes.
may I ask Mike a question?
Mhm.
Mike, is it, your understanding that what Senator Johnson is asking for is a letter of advice or an actual second opinion?
I believe she's getting opinion from Department of Justice on whether the provision that was interpreted as it being constitutional requirement that you have direct responsibility for the employee, is that a constitutional issue or not?
And the difference I'm trying to make there in terms of the vehicle that she's using, letter of advice is to the agency, and the opinion is from the AG directly overall.
Well, it would-
Isn't that the right perspective?
I would suppose that it's a advice to a legislator, not to the agency.
From the AG. If she's asking for it in that channel, as it would be considered from the member a request for.
So to enable them to help shape legislation if they're able to.
Yeah.
And we back up a little, because I don't think Commissioner Ordway knows what we're talking about with village, the change.
Okay, so why don't I go ahead, I'll try and give a brief overview of what, so.
Joe doesn't either.
Yeah, it was, I believe in March of 2018, of which a decision was brought down by the Department of Justice that said that cities who had their, and counties for that matter, had their building services, building code services, needed to have a building official that was knowledgeable and capable of looking at structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and approving what maybe an inspector had done. Most cities really had kind of an individual that was, maybe a .1 or a .2, that, just basically was there for the title aspect of what it meant in meeting what the statute had. And the Department of Justice came down with a ruling that said that this individual had to be a lot more knowledgeable. It really kind of created an issue because a lot of the cities really had contracted with private firms or with other maybe counties, cities that had these type of individuals there to perform the inspection services and also really be the people, for lack of a better way of saying it, who perform the work. That has all been tossed out because now if you're going to have your own building code services, based on the Department of Justice's ruling, it needed to be people who were certified, licensed to be the building official.
Employed by the county.
Employed by the, or the city. I think I covered that, yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of a, 40,000 foot level aspect of it. So where League of Oregon Cities and Association of Oregon Counties have said, whoa, wait a second, if that's the ruling there, we have many other issues that could be a problem, specifically with Gilliam and Wheeler County. We contract with, we're responsible for mental health services, and this is the first one that came online. We contract with Community Counseling Solutions. And basically what it would mean is that we would have to have a mental health specialist on our payroll to cover these services. So these are the current concerns really coming more from Association of Oregon Counties, because we have, a much wider range of things that we have to cover. But also the League of Oregon Cities has concerns because of, the issues that they have. So consequently, this was a big topic of conversation down at the Coastal Caucus this summer. And Senator Johnson, Betsy Johnson, got wind of it. And it, for lack of a better way of saying it, infuriated her to where she has really stepped forward to be the, torch bearer, trying to see what we can get to the bottom of this and come up with a solution that will be much.
Well, is it likely, Mike, do you think that the legislature will be able to act to change this?
I do. I'm not, haven't studied the law, but it just seems on the face of it. I mean, the key here is that they're saying that the building official is making a regulatory decision. And if they are making a regulatory decision, then that decision has to be under the purview of the government. So therefore, that person has to be an employee. And for them to make that decision, they have to be qualified as a building inspector, which takes a lot of testing and licensing and so forth. So it's an economy of scale problem, of course, for small jurisdictions. And so I'm optimistic, a little bit optimistic, that they'll find that it's a decision that can be remedied through legislation, where the legislature clearly says a county or city can contract this out through and have some of their uncertified employee supervising the contractor who is certified, then that's okay, and that's what you want.
Right.
So I'm fairly optimistic that happens.
Good, good.
And just to, full disclosure, I've met with a couple of private firms that's exactly what they do. They reached out and said, boy, we have a concern with this is really important, Judge, and, let's talk about it. And consequently, it was, I think they have a real legitimate case here and being concerned, and that's over the fact that they're, have people employed in different portions of the state and doing these inspection services. And suddenly it looks to me like, or to them, that this is all going to be going out the window and they won't be able to do that anymore. So, in full, I thought that this might be a good way for our three counties to look at it also. If we had, one building official that we shared between the three of us, that met some of these, depending on what it is in the ruling of the Department of Justice and what happens in the legislature, that we could contract with a private organization to do our building services in our particular area, which would allow us to keep our own reserves. But
One more piece. So Senator Rogan actually has a bill.
right, that works. Yeah,
Pending this decision.
yeah.
Well, you think the economics are such that our three little counties could actually do building codes on our own?
Well, again, the private entity is going to get the money out of the permits that they work and that they do. So ideally, I'm sure that this third party would be interested in having both Wasco and Morrow counties involved too. The one that most recent actually has offices in Eugene, Coos Bay, I think it was Portland, and also Kennewick.
So this is a private entity could take over building codes in our whole.
Yeah, the only thing that we would
area.
have is maybe between, you know, let's say the 3 counties, 4 counties, or 5 counties that we all, you know, put in for a building codes official that would cover, you know, 3 organizations. So this is where, you know, the conversation that we had just previously on a previous, you know, thing kind of carries over to some of the concerns that Les has talked about. But just, you know, again, kind of a thought process, and I'm open to any kinds of thoughts here, whether it's going to just go into Wasco County. You know, I think Wasco County is going to have to move fairly quickly. I think all of us are going to have to move fairly quickly in developing a plan. I have to tell you that I told Mark Long that I really wasn't in the mood to be making this plan until we had a better understanding of what this ruling might be and what the legislature might do.
Judge Schaefer?
Yeah, just let me finish. The one thing that Mark Long said is if the state ends up taking it back, we're going to be 2 to 3 years going through a process to ever get it back.
Just to get it back.
Yeah. Sorry, Les, I didn't mean to really cut you off. I just wanted to make sure I got that last point.
No, you weren't cutting me off, and I do want to mention that I appreciate the flexibility you're allowing me to participate in the conversation here, but I just wanted to mention that there is a perspective that hasn't really been mentioned here today, and that's the executive end of things, that is the governor's office, and how that might factor into the equation of the legislative end of it. Now, there's the 3 entities, actually there's a 4 probably, but there's 3 right at this point. If you get for the attorney generals, the legislatures, and the governors, and I'm wondering, maybe Mike would have something to say about this in terms of Nate Stice's participation, but shouldn't your plan perhaps also be, quote unquote, be looking at that aspect of it also? There could even be a change of administrations here.
It's funny you were talking that way, because I was just about to ask Nate Stice on, you know, what he thought maybe the might come out from the governor's office and what she thought. Nate, you maybe having difficulties hearing the conversation, but any input on the building codes?
Well, so I'm glad that the conversation reopened between the counties on doing something else. I know that Wasco County had sent a letter to Mark, and that through some conversations with some folks, I know that we were able to reopen that conversation so that we can have a end of end of October deadline for this conversation. The third-party contractor, I've heard the same things that Mike has heard from external partners. I have only had some cursory conversations in our office, and I think the most I can say right now is we're aware that there is going to be legislation going forward, and that some of us are working to highlight internally the importance of these third-party programs to the existence of rural Oregon. So,
Okay.
that's the most I can give you at this point.
Good. Well, that's good. Thank you, Nate. Any further comments we might have on this?
What's the timeline on this? Because it's a big deal right now out here, trying to get inspectors. It's a big deal. So it's slowing down a lot of our contractors. What's the timeline? What does this Mark Long have to say that they're going to turn it back to the state? Is Wasco County thinking of giving a different plan to you guys, maybe that would work, that would be more acceptable? Are they working on a different plan, or are they just sticking with plan A?
You know, Catherine, that's a really good question. When, you know, we were in Hood River on Friday, that was a topic of conversation to the Wasco County Commissioner and the administrator. What's going on? Well, we're still contemplating was really where things were at. That's what's concerning to me, is we have contractors here that are waiting anywhere from 5 weeks to 10 weeks in getting structural design and mechanical information back. And that's a long time for those people to have to wait on, you know,
Especially during
something.
construction season. Now we're going in
Yeah,
winter.
yeah,
Tanks and
It's not as
trucks aren't
critical.
inspected yet. That's been 5 or 6.
What I got out of
2
it,
months.
we'll get back to you. It's kind of what I
It's
got.
really
It's
the
exactly what I got. Then
Isn't it really the city of Dallas that's the?
I don't think there is a plan.
Because most of the
But the
building
plan A was
permits
from
in our
Wasco County,
area
we're
are in
gonna
the
charge
city
you
of
all on
Dallas.
that. And we're gonna
Much
take
more
over.
than Wasco County.
I guess,
Yeah, I would think so, Tom, you know, yeah. In trying to, I've been trying to get a hold of Brett Cook, who is the building official for Morrow County and actually the city of Boardman. Now, the last time that I talked to him was, he said 90% of his work was right there in Boardman, so it really wasn't that difficult. You know, but here, it still doesn't matter to if we have a homeowner out here, we would like to have at least a scheduled time that the contractors knew that somebody was going to be coming to perform whatever inspection needed to be done. We don't have that right now. It's just kind of we have the on our list. When we can, we'll get there. And I'm not so sure that, you know, that's conducive to us and what Gilliam County and I know Sherman County and some of our housing projects, and we've got wind projects coming in, there's solar projects, there's all kinds of things that, you know, really require quick movement on some of the inspectors and getting out there and getting it accomplished. Now, when Catherine asked for the timeline, I know that if I remember right, didn't Mark Long give us until the end of the calendar year?
Yeah,
Yeah, to get something together.
that's when they're gonna pull the plug into that.
That's right, yeah. Now, you know, I'm not so sure that we're gonna get the opportunity to get an extension on that. We had really, their goal, I think, when we met back in January, that being the Tri-County Court, and they came to us in Sherman County at that time, I believe.
I think we can get an extension. All we gotta do is have the governor talk to Mark Long.
Hear that, Nate?
Hey, well, so let me just, I have talked to Mark Long and I've talked to Luana Bertolini about that question, about the runway question of how long do you guys have? And I don't want to take off the pressure because I think we need to have get to a you know, a final point in this conversation. We have had, what, a year now to do that?
We're coming up on it.
But I have been told, and I will make sure this happens, that we can have some more space if we need it for the conversation. But there needs to be, you know, milestones in that conversation amongst the parties, amongst the counties, and some progress made. So I would take the December 31st, and Mark's saying we can't run this program any longer. He kind of did this on the call too a little bit, as he wants you to move forward in the conversation. But I think we can get some more time if we need to finish it, but not another 6 months.
Right.
Right.
And, you know, again, Nate, to me, this conversation was really rolling, and you know, I felt as if we had a great opportunity, either coming from Wasco County, and then when we ended up pulling the plug on that, and looking at the private contracting. I began this conversation, I think it was back in March or April, and when the ruling came down, and I thought, oh man, what do we do now? And I think I think we should try and hang with this December 31st timeline, simply because I think the people that need these services are getting a little impatient. So I guess if I had to make a suggestion, is it might behoove us, each one of our individual courts, to talk about work sessions and moving this specific topic forward, and not necessarily utilizing just our normal county court meeting dates that we have. so that we can move this a little bit quicker. Again, I agree with you, Tom. I think first of all, we need to wait and see what Wasco County brings back to us, and hopefully it's something that comes back soon. If it's too soon, though, I have a feeling that it will be exactly what was delivered to us before.
I don't think we want to wait for Wasco County. I think we need to start putting our heads together and trying to figure another way without Wasco County involved. And if Wasco County shows up, then that's great.
Well, the big thing we need is to have another option on the table that's viable.
Yes.
I don't think we have another option on the table that's viable, correct? But if we can develop one, if we can figure out a way to do it without Wasco County and the city of Dallas that's viable, then that would be great. That would increase our bargaining power, if nothing else.
I agree. And the person I guess I trust the most in this, and if you have somebody else, I'm certainly glad to listen. But I think Jeff Shaw has a really good background in this into things, and well, he does kind of engineering. He's an engineer. He's actually from Fossil.
Didn't he show up at one of our Tri-County?
He did, yeah. It happened to be the time that we were talking about him, yeah. And he's a really good character, and I think if I've got the opportunity to work with him and develop a plan that we could bring back to each one of the county courts to weigh, and I'd be more than happy to kind of, I guess, begin tackling that and see if we can get something going.
Have him put together a plan that we can consider.
Okay, let's do that.
So as a practical matter, to consider the private contracting option, you're going to have to get legislation passed. Even with an emergency clause, you're probably looking at September of next year.
Right.
My other thing, what about our legislature or our opinion or discussion or decision? So does that figure into our timeline?
Commissioner, I think it does, and it's really that, it's been the one thing that has been this catch-22. I think ideally for us, that contracting with a third party would be the perfect solution for our particular area.
But if you get a favorable opinion, that legislation has legs, then you can go to Wong and say, hey, let's see how this plays out.
Yeah. And I'm hoping it has legs, and you gave me some really good news this morning, so it's, nothing, I guess, again, I'll try and get the information to you as quickly as possible. I am going to ask that maybe we develop work sessions that would move this, not necessarily in a month time or a month and a half time, but maybe in a week to a 3-week period of time. Okay. All right, I think we've beat building codes to death here,
I'm
so.
still kind of curious as to what's in those reserves.
Well, there's approximately 3.5, 4 million.
I think,
But we don't know how it's divided up.
Yeah, I think the number that I heard was, it was between $2.5 and $3 million that were there. But nobody seems to know how those split out.
Well, Sarah Birnbach, my colleague, said she couldn't do it, but I think building codes at one time has said they could do it.
Right.
So I don't.
But I think they were going to have to go through each individual permit to,
It
they were not right. They would really prefer to give it all at one.
It's poor record keeping on building codes. I'll put it on. All this could have been done on a computer. It could have, I don't know whether it's QuickBooks or what, but it would have been very simple, but no, it's all paper. None of it's been done on a computer, so that's what we're up against.
And everything, if they're gonna have to build a new facility in Wasco County with reserve funds, why do we need it in Wasco County?
Yeah, why not put it in Sherman County?
Why not put it in Wheeler County?
Well, I had the Gronquist building down in Arlington, and I was trying to bring more money on board, and I thought, boy, that would be the central location for it, so.
We're gonna move on.
Okay, Association of Oregon Counties. I guess one of the things that I'd really like to talk about with it is the proposal that has come from them in paying back the the funds that were borrowed from the county roads program. I believe, I don't have any of these numbers here, but Gilliam County was $6,700 in a one-time payment to get that leveled back out again.
Ours would all three of the counties would be pretty close to this.
Yeah, it was going to be very close.
It was by population.
It went by population, and I think there was another portion of the formula that was in it that was.
10-year pay.
Yeah, it has to do a little bit, I think there was the membership based on, that was a portion of it, and then I think there was the county roads.
Yeah.
The way that things are split there, so. But anyway, I gotta tell you, I guess this is where I sort of get onto my soapbox a little bit. The Association of Oregon Counties to me is highly, highly valuable to our three counties. Again, I opened everything up today. If you took our three counties together, we'd still have the smallest populated county in the state. And I think it's an organization that really allows us the opportunity to network and work with other county commissioners and helping us carry a lot more weight to the legislature, to the governor, and all the other people that can help in making decisions that can create opportunities for us. This last year, I think we worked really, or year before last, we worked really, really hard on the transportation end of things, and you were able to utilize the colleagues from Washington and Wayne County in really developing a baseline funding for the transportation dollars that were coming to us. And it's going to be highly beneficial to each, well, it is right now, it's highly beneficial to each one of our counties. I think you guys, it's close to $800,000 a year coming in. For us, it was close to $700,000. That's a huge, huge thing that we can turn right back to the Association of Oregon Counties and helping us get that accomplished. There are many, many other things that come to the table regularly in developing for lack of a better, 36 counties or 35 counties.
36,
yeah. Yeah. So far. So, the ability to collaborate and work together and getting things accomplished. For us being the smallest one, we're never going to be the biggest dog in the room. That's just never, ever going to happen. Judge Pryor had told me at one time, don't worry about being the big dog, just be that little yipping dog that's in the corner the entire time that annoys everybody. And that's what we can do with those people down there, and we can utilize the Association of Oregon Counties as the tool to help carry our message. So to me, I'm very passionate about the organization, and that it can be something that I firmly believe in, trying to get it whole as quickly as we possibly can. One of the issues that happens, they're looking at having to pay back this loan. If they end up having to do it over a 10-year period of time, the staffing level that they have will remain low. And I'm not sure that the staffing level is in a position to where it can handle some of the needs that we have, plus the needs that many of the other counties in a collaborative effort can carry to the legislature in the way that we've gotten accustomed to having it done in the past. They're down 7 employees there. I don't see those employees coming back until this gets solved. And I think it could be a little bit difficult for the organization to operate. Now, in saying that, this isn't something that's going to be a quick fix tomorrow. They're going to ask a lot of us to be stepping forward and spending the time during the legislative session in talking with the electeds or the congressional or legislative people in carrying the message. And I think it's really important that we have a good organized effort in helping the AOC get this accomplished. So, it goes back to trying to make them whole again. Again, I don't think that this is going to happen overnight. We in Gilliam County have really, what was the decision? We decided we wanted to know what the other counties were going to do before we ended up making a decision on whether we were going to go whole or not, giving the whole $6,700. If it seems sort of foolish for us to give the $6,700 and only have half the counties go, well, no, we're going to take the 10-year payment plan. We wasn't sure whether that was going to be able to accomplish anything. So, I guess really what I'm trying to find out here is, where are we at? Where's each one of our counties?
We haven't
I think
discussed-
everybody's discussed. You haven't? Okay.
I haven't discussed it either, because what I understood at the conference down in Dallas was, those were just rough numbers, and they would get us nailed down the figures.
They're doing that.
Well, the
Part
audit,
of the budget meeting, was that yesterday?
that was, that was yesterday. That was yesterday.
I didn't participate.
Yeah.
I was waiting to bring it up when they have the actual figures, not, because
Yeah,
they said this is a rough guess.
Well, yeah, I think it's, I think it's pretty close. I think when I say pretty close, the auditing firm that has come in has really said this is the number that they see. So there's a second process that they're going through that is going to reaffirm really what those are. I think, the numbers that were handed to us are pretty solid. Not
The
enough
question I have
to
on
throw a stamp on.
is that just to pay them back what was loaned, or is that enough to keep going forward?
Well, that was just enough to pay back the loan. Then
That
there's a
budget.
whole, there's a membership dues committee that's
On top of
really
that.
that's going to be looking at things after this one issue is settled. Now, I don't see any change in our dues. I don't think there's enough time to be able to get that accomplished. See, it's the first of the year, so they operate
It's
on a
calendar
calendar,
year.
yeah. That they're going to be able to get that accomplished between now and
I think that's what the
January.
meeting was yesterday.
Well, I think it was a portion of it, but, it was kind of a budget meeting and seeing what, where they were going to be able to go. I had the agenda, or not the agenda, but the documentation. I couldn't participate in the meeting, so.
Can I have a little context?
Yeah.
So I looked at the October financials report from the treasurer. AOC had $2.3 million cash and $1 million in general operating. What happened is that there were 3 different accounts for investments, and the bookkeeper at the time was keeping all of the road money in the best yielding investment account. So there's still $530,000 in that account, which could pretty much take care of the loan to the roads, if in fact that's owed, which the former financial manager now disputes. And instead of public records request, I don't know if they talked about that.
I don't know.
But Kimmy first heard about it when she read about it in the Oregonian. And so she sent a public records request. She says absolutely don't owe that money. So I don't know what's going to happen there. But what's happened is AOC has a cash flow problem, because all the reserves belong to the roads.
Yeah.
And so we had the task force that came up with the Murdoch plan, which would have increased our, created a different dues structure, which is long overdue.
Right.
And so I think that conversation needs to go on, and that has to be approved at the annual meeting if it's
Yeah.
going to be changed.
Right.
So I think there's several different variables here that could affect how this turns out.
Yeah, and I think really we're not going to know anything until really after the annual meeting and what the proposal is going to be when we have the business meeting there.
And the other thing, Steve, I don't know where they get 7 staff down. Last year, we right-sized staff. So that in August of 2017, we let 2 policy people go. Then Laura Cleveland went out with her disability, and then me, and not having a director. So they're only down 4.
Yeah, I'm just going off of the number that Mike threw out at us at the
Maybe your work,
district
you and
meeting.
Laura are worth 7.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Well, yeah, I think really the concern is in the policy end of things. The one individual that was added during that period of time was the chief
COO.
operating officer, which was, I think, I don't know, I would keep my opinion myself on this right now, so. But anyway, I think it's, something the ball is rolling on this. I don't know where it's going to go yet. I think it's really important for us to be engaged in what's there. Again, it was $6,700 to Gilliam County, fairly similar number to.
Similar to each of
Yeah,
us.
to each of us here. Yeah,
It's about 5,700 for Sherman and 5,400 for Wheeler.
okay, yeah.
Judge, may I ask a question on
Sure.
this? I'm going to ask this based on having attended the retreat session, as they called it. It was more the planning session that the full board of AOC held at Welch's to take up the conversation after Mike left. And also having been aware of the budget committee processes that are now in place at AOC. And I think it's important from the local perspective, at least I would like to hear it today, the three individual courts indicate whether they think it's important, what they think it's important most for AOC to do, to continue its advocacy role, or to become a service organization, or both. That's where I'm thinking maybe those two, that perspective is what needs to be talked a little bit about today. Am I making sense?
Yeah, perfectly.
And I'd also like to ask if Nate wants to chime in on this, because I'm thinking that going forward, the role of the regional solutions aspect of the governor's office is going to be a part of the equation here because of the fact that apparently AOC is not continuing its county solutions program. So if he has a comment, if it's okay with the chair, I'd also like to hear that.
I haven't heard where that AOC is not going to continue with its county solutions program. My understanding is that's going to continue. It just will operate. It's not going to be able to use any of the revenue that comes from membership dues. Up to this point, it's been able to operate based solely on as it performs a duty, it puts a price on it and brings the revenue in that way. I think it's going to be able to continue operating based on its own revenue sources. To me, I think it's become a fairly popular entity to turn to. But Nate, were you able to hear Les Verk's question?
I did not hear it entirely. So.
Okay. Can you ask again, Les?
Well, I think the most important question I had to do with each court's perspective on the overall aspect of what AOC is, service or advocacy. But Nate, what I was asking from the governor's office is whether it will be stepping in to fill the void that there might be of the county solutions program at AOC not being there.
I think the county solutions program is very narrowly focused on sort of helping county leaders be conveners on problems. Certainly regional solutions does similar work, but I think it's at a different level and really focused on state agencies rather than on sort of county issues. So I think Steve answered part of that question, that I think county solutions really has its own budget model, and the second part is I think we'll continue to work with county solutions when there's a state agency tie-in.
And the other piece of it, of course, is Oregon Solutions, which if county solutions didn't exist, there'd be a lot of pressure on Oregon Solutions to pick up those projects that, like the Oregon Coast Trail right now that they're doing, and the tide gates projects, those sorts of things.
Right. Okay. Well, I think, we kind of painted the picture for Association of Oregon Counties and where we're at with it. Do we have any further questions, discussions that might want around it? Again, I think Les has a really good question here. Do we want them to be a service entity for us or advocacy? I think really, in a way, they sort of have. It's important specifically for us small counties. A little bit of both. County Solutions is really a good service and organization. For me particularly, I've used it once with the Norco organization and developing, and then we also used it for the Frontier Telnet issue that we had. And I think, both of those, Norcor worked out very, very well. Frontier Telnet is still, we're still in flux on some of the things that have been brought forward and what's going to be the next step of it. So I firmly believe in, so that would be the service portion of it. The advocacy, I think, is really, where we would end up using them on a regular basis, having the conversations and specifically with other county commissioners and helping carry the message that we have an issue with. And let's go write the building codes. I think it's something that we're in the middle of right now. Decisions and efforts are really important. That there's a staff individual and a policy individual that really kind of helps gather all the information and gets it back to us. So I guess Les, I'm sort of saying I think I'm of the opinion that we need to really kind of continue using them in both ways, just simply because of our size.
I agree with Steve and Lynn. They're both. I know there's times could have used them, should have used them.
That's a really good point. Okay. Yeah, if we have nothing further on AOC, why don't we can take a break here for a minute, because I could sure use the break. People don't mind. Let's get our, Nate, can you give us about 10 minutes?
Sure thing.
Why don't we go ahead and get started? Yeah.
Somehow, well.
He did turn on the video a short time ago, so. Okay, the next thing that we have on our agenda is the housing shortage, and I believe this is an issue that we have in at least, well, I think it's all over the state. Let's put it that way. It's one of the issues that we talked about earlier, of course, is building codes, but I know that we've kind of created a solution that we're operating through the Pioneer Community Development Corporation, and it's an incentive program through loans and grants to get more people in.
How's it working?
Well, I think we had our first taker come to us shortly. He's building a house down in Arlington. I think he come in on the loan program, which basically, I'm trying to remember, there's been some things that it gives them almost a year of finances, construction finances, and also the ability to market before they end up having to pay the money back. I probably could look at our entire program here, but
I think we've had 4 people use our program that pays up to $20,000 to remodel a non-owner occupied home.
okay.
It's for rentals.
Rentals only.
Although they buy a home that they're not living in and then renovate it and then move into it, so that's where it's been used an awful lot. But it seems to be successful, and we may very well have some people wanting to use our other program, which is to build rental housing, duplexes and things like that.
Yeah, what are you guys offering, a $20,000 grant for?
$10,000 grant for each unit, so a duplex would get $20,000.
Okay.
About an accessory dwelling unit. Accessory dwelling unit,
What is that?
a small additional building on a tax lot, like granny flat.
It has to have a complete kitchen and everything in it. That's typically willing to
Give you a little something
If
that's
it
going
was a
on.
small, complete house, I think it would qualify.
In Sherman County, we've had 41 house sales in the last 12 months. Well, this year, so $3.8 million is floating around. George Vista and Rufus started off with 20 lots. They have 6 left. They've sold in the last 4 weeks, all but 6.
Okay.
And chances are there's less than 6 because there's some pending sales also. I got this straight from the assessor's office.
Are these people that are likely to build, or are they just?
They're coming from out of state. Some of them are coming from California, from Washington.
They plan on it, but they gotta figure out what they're gonna do with building codes first.
That's why building codes is really kind of important for us. We've also got the
They're not spec, I was
the truck stop that's in process of being built right now. They've waited approximately 6 weeks to get their tanks certified. They're in the ground, and they've been compressed, and we can't count them up until the inspector comes and inspects them. It's been 6 weeks, and they're still sitting there. They're going ahead with the construction, but it'd be nice to be able to cover those tanks up.
Yeah. I think the tanks are handled by, I think that's DEQ.
They could do that, but it's still been 6 weeks.
Right, yeah, 6 weeks is 6 weeks, doesn't matter what state agency it is that's doing it. Well, again, to me, the housing issue throughout the state is a problem. Ours, I think, is a whole lot different than what, and Nate, don't take this the wrong way, but what the governor has as viewing as a problem, and really what the legislature views as a problem. Homelessness down in the valley area is a big issue, and so they're working towards trying to create funds for low income type building. And for us, it's really more about a workforce housing. It's more of a market rate that we're looking at and trying to develop here. Specifically here in Gilliam County, about, I think there's, the number I heard was roughly 70 of the employees working down in waste management are living out of the area. That's an issue, that's a problem for us.
We had the same thing mentioned with teachers working at the school for quite a long while. They were commuting from Prineville.
Yeah.
Well, that's what got us motivated our original rental grant program, because we didn't, our previous administrative assistant was a teacher at the high school and couldn't find any place in Sherman County to live, so she went to the Dalles. And we hoped to keep those kind of people.
But what's strange, though, is that 51% of the people that are working in Sherman County, that live in Sherman County, work outside of the county. Which is a large, I couldn't believe that. 51% of the people living in Sherman County work in the Dalles or Hood River or Portland right now. Well, somehow we've got to build more homes, family-style homes, livable homes. We've got plenty of shacks. If we could get halfway decent homes built, so that the people who are living in the shack would move to the new home, then there'd be room for low-income housing in the shack. That's the way I look at it. So in Sherman County, the farmers, they retire off the ranch, build a new home in the town or in the Dalles, and they die there. They don't move from upgrade from one house to the next like they do in the metropolitan areas. But they end up dying in the home, and then that's the only time the one's for sale. That's why I'm thinking 41 sales. I think there must have been pretty close to 40 deaths in the county. And I might be pretty close to that figure for this year, the way things are going.
Yeah, I just wonder, for me, it seems to be a lot of the kids, and I'm going to go with, kids who graduated from high school here and have gone away and got into maybe professional type work. They're wanting to come back, but they don't want to move back out onto the farm. They want to move back, and similar to Joe's circumstance here, maybe on the farm, but have a small piece that is theirs, the 10, 5, 10, whatever acreage that's available. And I feel that there's an awful lot of people that really would take advantage of that here. We have some land use issues that I think prevent that from happening.
Planning's killing us in Wheeler County.
Is it?
It is. Yeah. We have people come in, they like the area, but they don't want to live in the city limits, they want to be able to live out
Yeah.
on
Well,
the small acreages.
Yeah.
Well,
Land use laws in Oregon need to be, the county needs to have the ability through legal means to tweak the land use laws somehow.
well, there are ways of being able to get through it, it's just pretty cumbersome in getting it accomplished.
Well,
The issue that you have is that, you know, when it's a person that just wants to build a home on 10 acres, you know, the process gets pretty monotonous to them. And
And what happens with Wheeler County, you lose them to other areas.
Right,
Yeah.
right, that are in a better position to be able to partition off and make that happen. I think there's an area that, to me, I think it's a gold mine, if we, and that being in around the Kinsey Golf Course. You know, I just believe that could be an area that could really create a heck of a boom for Wheeler County and getting the professional type people in there, building a home, you know, on 5-10 acres out there. You know, to me, that just would be an ideal area to be. It'd be similar to the Sun River. Maybe it'd never get that big, but you know, when Bend was beginning to expand, Sun River was a location that it was like, oh, I'd like to have a piece over in that particular area. Now, of course, you go into Sun River and it's house after house after house, but you know, didn't originally start that way. But I don't, you know, again, for me, housing is, I think we have three issues that are going on. First of all, the money that's coming from the state is really directed towards that low income, taking care of that homeless. The second thing is that there's very few contractors out there that are working. Most of them, you know, specifically on the east side, there's very few of them. The third thing is you know, their concerns of those people getting inspected in an appropriate time. Those are three things that
We
I see.
could
as
get the
big concerns.
contractors if we were building $500,000 or $1 million homes.
Well, of course, yeah.
They'd show up in groves.
Right.
They're interested in the high value homes because there's more percentage of.
Yeah, better
percentage
return,
of
yeah.
return.
I mean, you build a, you know, $350,000 home, you take home, you know, $70,000 for
Yeah.
doing that. You build a $225,000 home here, and you're taking home 30 or
Yeah.
35,000. But also, it's still, you know, we have a need here, and how do we solve that? You know, I've got some emails here that it's kind of a different subject, but I just almost feel, and I've had this conversation with Governor Brown quite a few different times, but the career technology educations that, you know, we're performing in the schools, CTE programs have been cut. And this is an area that we could really begin developing interest with our high school students, and whether they, to become an electrician, become a plumber, to become a, you know, somebody in the construction field in that sort of trade. And I don't, you know, I don't know how to move the needle on that. You know, I think Governor Brown has got some ideas. I think they could be, you know, really beneficial, but again, it's school districts and their lack of funds right now, because of the lack of students that we have, it's really difficult for them to begin thinking about additional programs, that maybe the funding will be there for a year or two, but after that, there's no guarantee. And so, you know, that's kind of what I hear back from the superintendents.
Well, I think every county is a little different on their housing needs. And unfortunately, what comes out of Salem is one size fits all, and it doesn't necessarily fit our needs. We need the ability to be able to tweak the use of those dollars somehow. And that isn't the way they think. It's one size fits all, and it just flat does not work in these rural counties.
Nate, would you like to speak on behalf of the governor and you know, what she's talked about in regards to her CTE programs?
Well, I'm not going to go into the CTE programs.
Okay. Education.
I'll follow up on that one with you individually, Judge Schaefer. But I would like to point out there's this great program called Regional Solutions that has flexible pots of money that have in some areas been applied to local approaches to housing. Based on actually the experience in the North Central region and what the governor was hearing from across the state, we went about a process this last year, a very, very long process, to ask for some different regional approaches to housing. Basically, we sent a request for information, followed up with a request for application for $2 million with the request to local communities saying, hey, show us your best approach to housing. Working with developers, working with governments, and we funded, 4 pilot projects across the state that were based on local approaches in Gilliam County, in Jefferson County. I'm not going to get them all off the top of my head, but based on this, if you read the governor's housing policy agenda, we will be asking for $15 million to do the same sort of process again, to scale it up, to say, hey, communities show us how you are going to work with developers to address your own issues. There's obviously a large focus in the housing plan on also the homelessness issue, which by the way is an issue across the state. You can ask folks in lots of the rural communities, maybe not the frontier ones. It's an issue there too, but I think we've heard, at least on the funding side, that one size doesn't fit all, and we are trying to apply that regional solutions, local flavor to that. So that's in the governor's housing agenda. You'll see something called the Greater Oregon Housing Accelerator, and that's that $15 million that's sort of meant to help with the conversation that you all are talking about. So that's what I've got for the housing conversation. And then in the North Central region, I know we continue to work to try to make the loan fund work for Hood River, Wasco, and Sherman County. But I think the story that I would tell about Sherman as a frontier county is that the incentives that they're providing locally are a much greater benefit to developers than a slight cut on interest rates. We are on that loan fund. One of the conversations we've had at a staff level, haven't taken to our board yet, is what can we do in terms of flexibility and holding those interest rates down. So as market interest rates go higher, we're able to maybe keep some building going and lure, continue to keep builders and developers in the 3 counties in the North Central region. So it's a challenge across the state. But it sounds like the market is starting to work in Sherman a little bit.
Yeah, it is.
Rick, I've been to a bunch of housing meetings, and it amazed me how different parts of Eastern Oregon are as far as their housing needs. Hood River and Bend, it's a whole different problem. They're trying to build low-income housing to house the waiters and the people who are serving these big multi-million-dollar homes that they've got built
Right.
in other parts of the city, and that isn't us at all.
No.
And Hermiston, I guess, is similar, is joining them in their housing needs, but it isn't our needs at all.
Right.
So
Right.
you go to a meeting with them, and it's just, there's very little commonality that we see.
Yeah.
Hey, Ms. Schaefer, what's the best route to make sure people are aware of? Should I send this to, what list should I send this housing?
I would say the court administrators list would be probably the best place to start. They'll have the listservs to get it out to almost everybody.
Okay.
Okay.
Mike, I just wanted to accentuate what we're talking about. The Sherman County plan is working very, very well. You have some older stock that's being redone, and now some new stock. Those Gorge Vista sales are impressive because those really sat vacant for 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
One house was built, and it's kind of ironic because the person who built that original house moved to Wasco, sold that house, and is building another house in
Down
Gorge
the same
Vista.
place.
And it's funny, almost all those lots are sold. A lot of people I talk to don't know what Gorge Vista is, so I've just gone to calling it Nufus. And it's, they're getting that one. But when I was at the last Rufus City Hall meeting, there was a request to take one of the industrial lots and rezone it for multifamily housing, and there's a group that wants to build a 16 to 32 unit right on that 4 to 5 acres. I think it's 4.5 acres, something like that. And Rufus was all for it. And I'm certain that builder would come to you and say, 16 units, that's $160,000, please. And that would buy the lot.
That kind of money in there.
Well, you might need to refuel that if you.
Well, we may have to cancel that whole program until next budget year, because we're starting to get down to where we don't have that much money in that now.
By being successful.
Yeah.
But, a 16 unit really says something about that program working.
Yeah.
A 32 really says something.
Well, that's the workforce in Biggs that needs a place
It
to
is.
live.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Biggs and Rufus.
But mainly Biggs, but,
Was trying to pull up ours. But yeah, there's construction loans, there's incentive loans for, people to do rental housing. We also have grant programs available for them to do rehabilitations. We also jumped in on, most recently, I think the last county court meeting agreed to an amendment to ours, or an addendum to our agreement with PCDC, which would develop, basically mimic what you guys are doing. There seemed to be some discussion of success going on over in Shawnee County, so we're trying to open it up to as many, I guess, get as many tools in the toolbox to see what we can get accomplished. But again, I think in Wheeler County, I think there's plenty of people who would be willing to build. It's just a matter of, some of the issues with land use.
Well, that's not, the big issue is going to come down to land use. We're filling up our lots inside the city limits.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the cities in Sherman County have no urban growth boundary.
Mm-hmm.
In our infinite wisdom back 30 years ago, when they did the land use, they did not put urban growth boundaries on any of the Sherman County cities. It's city limits, that's it.
Yeah.
So we're going through a process right now with LCDC, economic development, or whatever it's called. And we're studying, trying to figure out how many empty lots are in the cities right now, and what it would take to do an urban growth boundary change to each of the cities.
the urban growth boundaries are bigger than the city limits?
Yes.
So you can.
The outside the city limits, there are so many acres outside the city limits that you can suck into the city limits to
But then that would.
put sewer and water to.
Yeah.
Grass Valley, on the other hand, has got a problem, and we need 20 houses right now. I mean, right now. And because of the hemp processing facility that's operating there, they've got 20 employees that they've got in everything from travel trailers to tents, basically.
Mm-hmm.
They're working full-time at the hemp project. They need houses now, not tomorrow, but now. And I don't know, they're bringing in some of those units from North Dakota, but they're not legal. There's land use laws on those too, so it's getting to be a little touchy back over there in Grass Valley, to say the least.
So as long as the inspectors are that far behind.
Well, as long as the inspector doesn't show up, we're all right.
Does Grass Valley
We
have
don't
the
want that
infrastructure?
building code.
Does Grass Valley, do the cities have the infrastructure to add all these houses?
No.
Yeah, so that's another big
Well,
problem.
Grass Valley has the water,
They got
but they're on
water.
septic.
Oh, they're all,
So they could add septic if you have enough drain field. That's the problem.
They take 2 lots,
Yes.
minimum 2 lots to build a house.
We just had some lots that have been on the market since I've worked at the city, and they've just sold. And they're now doing perk tests, and it's like, I don't know if they're gonna pass, but if not, our master plan has a way to get it, but it's gonna be a lot of money to get it.
Yeah.
But the housing here has gone crazy the last year.
Has it?
Yes. I mean, as soon as it comes on the market, it's gone.
And who are they?
A lot of them are people migrating from Hermiston, the valley, because they've been priced out.
Priced out. Similarly, ours are coming out of Portland because they're fed up with the rat race of Portland and they're being priced out.
Yeah, the city of Condon has a subdivision plan in the works, but my job, Nate, is to find money. So we need to talk. He's gone.
I still.
I'm sure Business Oregon would love to give you some loans.
Chris Harder, right past the buck.
Yeah.
Judge Schaefer,
Yeah,
may I ask Nate a question?
sure, absolutely.
Nate, West Ruark. Do you see the governor's office as feeling that the $300,000 that was allocated to DLCD this last session for the economic analysis as doing what Judge Thompson alluded to, tweaking the land use statutes eventually? Do you see that as facilitating that type of an effort?
I see that money as studying the barriers to economic development and growth in those counties. And I think inclusive in that, I think it's really up to the counties to shape how they want to look at it. Inclusive in that is infrastructure, zoning barriers, people sitting on 3 housing lots, Judge Thompson, and land use pieces. I think if the county wants to go down that path, but I think it's up to the counties to design that work. Color commentary, I don't know that, I know they've got quite a few communities who are looking at this, and I think based on sort of that staff capacity, the money is, I think, really going to be focused more on the infrastructure piece, and I think a lot of the larger land use questions might be more appropriate for groups like AOC to dig into. So.
If I may, Judge, just a follow-up question, and I appreciate where Judge Thompson is coming from on the issue involved here, but I'm also appreciating the fact that when you bottom line this down to what's actually matters here, it's going to be EFU lands. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering how the governor's office is looking at that part of that piece of it going forward here. Are we looking at attempting to suggest what changes to the EFU statutes that are applicable here need to be made?
The mandate of this money that's coming out of the governor's office is not looking at amending statutes. It's looking at working within the current land use system. Is what that money is for. So I don't know if any of the commissioners at the table have a different understanding of what that money's focused on, but it's really focused on working within the current land use system.
Correct.
Yeah, it's to get a supply, it's to see what we've got to work with. But talking about EFU ground, I don't want to take any EFU ground out, but we've got ground that I don't classify as EFU, I call it non-resource. It has no use. That's EFU. I would like to be able to take some of that ground and be able to build on it. Take it out of EFU, put it in non-resource or something else. But that, it even gets narrowed down even further. If it doesn't have water, electricity, or a road to it, it can't be built on. So that narrows the land, the amount of available land even narrower. That's under EFU. So out of maybe 10,000 acres in Sherman County that's in the non-resource, there might be only 1,000 acres or maybe even 500 acres that you could even build on. So it narrows it down even more, but I can't get that message across to LCDC. They don't seem to see it that way. Once it's the EFU ground, don't touch my EFU ground, it's protected. You can't do anything but farm. I think that's the wrong attitude to have, especially when at least thinking of it as an economic development tool.
Yeah, specific.
That's my feeling. I don't know if it's wrong or I'm way off base or what, but I know I'm getting a lot of pushback from Farm Bureau and people like that. They don't want, it's sacred ground, they don't want it touched. But I think we should be able to, county should have some flexibility on by doing it the proper way, doing the hearings, doing all that, should have some proper way of being able to build a house on 5 acres somewhere.
If I may, Judge, I would tend, my reaction to your response, Judge, is that I would tend to sympathize and understand what you're getting at. My only concern is that it needs to be occurred as Judge Safert has indicated it probably will, through the existing statutory framework.
Correct.
Versus Senator Courtney's bill from last session that would have exempted the counties from all of that existing structure.
Which was a bit of a concern for me here in Gilliam County, because really the success that we have is based on our abilities to have the conditional use permits and what we were able to do, and the landfill and some of the wind turbines that it was these land use laws that allowed us to become what we are.
I think it would have been left up to the county courts, and I think, being a farmer myself, I think I would have protected the farm ground probably even more so than they're being protected now. I don't feel that solar panels should be on farm ground. I don't care what the value of the farm ground is, I don't think it should be, but Sherman County does have 100 acres of good farm ground that's covered up with solar panels right now. And I really don't think that's proper use of that ground. But I think it should have been on non-resource ground. They should have put those panels on ground that you can't farm.
Yeah, and we're looking at the same thing here. I think we have it's a project that they're looking at 600 acres, and really the prime farm ground that we have here. One project, 600 acres, that is going to be filled with. Their proposal is solar panels. So, I'm fighting that tooth and nail but then also the developer is going, geez, if I go out onto the non-resource land that you're talking about, I have an endangered species issue that, end up having to spend 10 times the amount of money and proving that out, and it's like,
think of all
we need
the
some
shades
adjustments
of
here.
Washington ground squirrels we have.
Yeah, that's, I find it quite,
Is that 600 acres next to a substation?
fairly close, yeah, but it wouldn't be a substation that would be used, they would build their own substation.
Well,
Yeah,
the
and just
the
transmission.
transmission lines is,
Yeah, the transmission lines are within the area for them to be able to hook into.
Yeah.
And one of the issues with the transmission lines is this company purchased capacity on those lines quite some time ago in anticipation of putting this project in. And so they've been holding on to it for a long period of time, and they're right in that area to where all the other wind turbines and everything else are. So it's, yeah.
Judge, if I may, I want to thank you very much for allowing me to participate in the conversation today again, because I know that's a little bit different. Could I ask one last question?
Sure, yeah.
That is, I don't want to put Mike on the spot here, I'm kind of good at that. But he and I have had conversations about what I was talking about here in terms of Judge Thompson's point, and I've always appreciated his perspective, even though at times I've kind of disagreed with it. So what I'm getting to is, I think it'd be valued for maybe Mike to highlight a little bit about, just if it's briefly as he can do, but what his take on this is at this point.
Well,
1502.
You're talking about land use in general?
Well, the Courtney Hansel bill from last session
Right.
and what, how that fits here.
Yeah, that's, Oregon is in Action and Dave Honeycutt were the authors of that bill. The fact that Senator Ferrioli was very much an advocate for loosening up some land use restrictions to serve his area, this area, at the time was the political reason why that got legs. I think there's going to be huge resistance, and starting with the governor, or ending with the governor probably, because the governor's not going to sign a bill that weakens Oregon's land use laws, not this governor anyway. So I think you have to work within the system, like you're saying, but I think there's ways to tweak the system. Remember, Sherman County cited a racetrack on EFU ground, and we did that by going through the process. It took 9 months to get through the process, but it was doable, and that's what people lose sight of in the land use system. There are ways to navigate it and do what Judge Thompson's saying is you change the definition of EFU in your comprehensive land use plan, or you create a separate kind of a zone. This is what we did with the racetrack. We created a motorsports park as a type of zone, an area, and then made them a conditional use. And that's why you've got development of renewable energy here, because the people in '77 had the foresight to put utility facilities in as a conditional use, not as it was permitted as a conditional use, which gave you the authority as courts to allow that sort of development. So I think that what it does, and Jackson and Josephine and Douglas went through this process of trying to reclassify. And even those 3 counties in the contiguous there was so much difference in their land use, in the land itself. It was hard for them to come up with the definitions. It takes resources to go through that process, redefine those lands that have low capacity for agriculture. But I think if you wanted to do a concerted effort, Sherman and Gilliam are so similar, you could do it there. You can have a different situation in Wheeler County because they have timber. But if you have enough resources and you want to go at this, I think there's ways that it can be done without taking on the rest of the state.
Right. And I really think that that's this economic analysis that DLCD is putting together really develops more of something like Judge MacArthur was talking about here. It really does an analysis of the land that's available out there and determining, what's available within the cities. My conversation with Director Jim Rue was that we didn't have the capacity to be able to do the analysis. And so consequently, that's kind of where the conversation got started in getting the money from the state to develop personnel for the capacity to be able to get this accomplished. I know they're quite interested in an awful lot of information coming from our planner right now, of which we have not had the capacity to be able to develop and supply it to them. And so they're quite amazed about that issue. So it's something that's got them, they're, okay, I guess we'll need to get somebody out in the area. And it's what I've said is, we need the help within the area to be able to get it done. So.
Mike, is it true that we can address the problem of these 5-acre units that people want to live on within the existing system?
I think so.
I think so.
By redefining, or either creating a zone, rural residential, which is what you've got in Kent now. Rural residential zone. Yeah.
Zone. And that allows 5-acre plots.
If that's the way you define it, yeah. It can be up to 5 acres or up to 10 acres.
There's a huge interest in that kind of.
But the problem with Kent is there's no water. We all run.
Right.
They got electricity, they got roads, but no water.
Well, that's a problem you could probably solve if you put enough money in.
I don't know how many thousands of feet you're gonna have to go down to hit water and all that.
Or important to pipe it in from somewhere.
It'd be cheaper to pipe it in.
Pipe it in.
Yeah, that's, where it always brought me back to Kinzu, the old Kinzu location, because a lot of that was already there. I mean, we know the water sources there simply because of what was there before. And I just felt that, there would be a great opportunity for that area to really kind of take advantage of maybe some adjustments in some of the land use laws that were there. Senate Bill 243 was not something that, this was one of those AOC situations to where there seemed to be an awful lot of path moving forward with it. Senate Bill 243 is the one that Les was talking about that was carried by Senator Courtney.
432, for whatever it was.
Yeah.
I know what the.
Yeah, I know we're talking the same one. I thought it was 240, yeah. But anyway, to make a long story short, it was something that I couldn't get my complete hard mind in behind it, but also I didn't want to be the one that was standing there with the, blocking anybody from being able to go forward. So.
Let me give you an example of what Tom was asking. Just driving over here, you go through an area before you get to Cottonwood Canyon, before you get to Hay Canyon, called Nish. You know where Nish is? Okay. Where there's a road, there's a gravel pit, ODOT pit, and the Hay Canyon elevators down there. But there's some nice ground down below with, I'm sure, water accessible.
Next to Grass Drive Canyon.
Yeah, and so you could redefine that area as a rural residential because it's not actively farmed. I mean, you could graze it, I guess, but define it as land that's never been wheat farmed and redefine it as rural residential and put it into your land use, comprehensive land use plan, and then as a conditional use, somebody could apply to build it for 5 acres in it.
Yeah.
But there are other areas around the county like that you could rezone essentially.
And really, that's what this economic analysis is going to help us be able to define.
The issue is we don't have staff that's capable of doing that.
Yeah. Well, this is a huge project that's laid on top of what their normal work is, and yeah. So, anything we want to go any further? Lunch is here. We're inviting everybody for lunch. So.
Just
Ready to go,
set up,
so why don't we go ahead, we'll break and recess and maybe pick things back up at, let's say, 12:40. That we can come out of recess, back into the Tri-County Court meeting. The next thing on the agenda, we have Frontier Telnet and Frontier Regional 911. But I think before we get started with that, I'd like to have Judge MacArthur. He's putting together policy and advocacy group that I think it would be kind of nice for us to hear.
So actually, I've restarted consultancy that I had about 15 years ago when I was working for libraries in Eastern Oregon.
Okay.
And found a couple colleagues who were similarly retired county judges. Judge Pryor from Gilliam County and Judge Grasty from Harney County, and we all had a career trying to work to advance circumstances and economies and the situation of what we call frontier, which Federal Department of Health describes as less than 2 people per square mile. And so often people talk about rural versus urban, but what we wanted to emphasize, what we have always talked about is some of rural is so rural that it should be called frontier, which is why you have Frontier Telnet, that came from that effort, and all the other frontier designations. So we call ourselves frontier advocates. And we're in the process of determining what it is we can do that would continue to benefit the areas that we come from. And we think maybe focusing on a few big issues might be a way to do it. We think there's a real need for education. That people just don't understand what it's like to live in rural areas. I remember talking to people about, they say, well, I'm 6 miles from town. And how long does it take you to get there? Well, 6 minutes. And where do you go for a jug of milk? Well, it's only 6 minutes away. It takes that long to get anywhere in urban areas as well. There's so many issues that a lot of times frontier counties and frontier areas, it's just not understood. The circumstances of your lack of economy of scale. Capacity is one of those issues that keeps coming up. We don't have expertise to be able to redo our land use plans. We don't have enough building going on to afford a building inspector. Another good one is all the gas taxes used to be allocated based on registered vehicles, which didn't take into consideration the number of road miles. Sherman County, by the way, has the highest number of road miles per person in the state of the you know, we call it the major collectors, and Gilliam's close behind. So, but the money used to get allocated strictly on registered vehicles, and even though we all got 2 or 3 pickups, it didn't. We have the highest, I think the highest number of registered vehicles per person too. In Sherman County, I looked that up one time. Anyway, but so now we got a little fixed, you know, in the last transportation bill, so that, and that took advocacy on the part of rural frontier roadmasters, making their case with the other roadmasters, who then made their case with the county commissioner. So it was an internal thing amongst the counties to redistribute the money based on road miles to some extent. You know, another good example is the so-called the minimum wage, prevailing wage issues, of imposing prevailing wage from a region on projects in. I remember when we did the senior center in Sherman, had to pay prevailing wages that were based on wages farther west, and they were much higher than we could have gotten. Anyway, so there's a whole number of issues. We think the building codes issues are a really good one, a good example. Housings that you've been talking about, your broadband, of course, is the other one that you guys are way ahead on broadband here, but there's a lot of parts of the rural, Weaver's not so far ahead, I guess.
Well, they're ahead.
They're ahead of us.
They're ahead now? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you guys taking care of that. But that's another good example of where economy of scale doesn't work. So we're trying to, you know, we have a lot of relationships in the west side and throughout the state, you know, from our careers, and so we're trying to see how we can parlay those relationships and our knowledge into continuing to help those things we've been passionate about. All our careers is working to help Frontier Oregon.
Right.
And so we're looking for where we're going to put our energy, but we've also got energy and we also want to be involved.
And I think for, you know, I guess specifically the Tri-County area, you know, I think we'd be foolish not to utilize the expertise that these people can bring to the table and some of the projects that we've looked at and are discussing. You know, I wanted to make sure that he was able to talk about that. He and I had talked about that for a while, the opportunity of utilizing their expertise for, you know, some of us, even when you're in as a county commissioner or a judge for a 6-year period of time, you still, I mean, it was told to me that, you know, it takes you as a commissioner, it takes you 2 years before you really understand all the things that you're responsible for. And it is, it's almost 2 years before the light bulb comes on and all that goes on. Then you just realize what it is you need to do. Now it's going out and trying to get work done. And these people will give us, I think, can give us a great opportunity to speed up the ball, get it rolling quicker, and create a better.
You may not know the history, but once upon a time, Judge Pryor's efforts and with our support established an Office of Rural Policy inside Governor Kulagowski's office. And the purpose of that was to look at policies that were being put forward by the administration and by the legislature that would have had some negative impact, because oftentimes people don't realize what some bill or law how it might affect the more rural frontier parts of the state. So the idea was to review that. That didn't last because of funding, but there's still a need, I think, for some watchdog, if you will, on policies that are coming out of Salem. I mean, the current governor purports to have her rural development being one of the major initiatives that she's working on, but seeing real concrete examples of that are a little bit scarce.
Yeah.
I mean, having Nate access to Nate and Regional Solutions is the best thing that the governor has supported, I think, to help sustain rural frontier Oregon.
And I think that's a big thing for us to continue pushing for is the survival of the Regional Solutions groups. again, to me, I think anytime, and I'm throwing this out, anytime you talk to any legislator or state representative in any way, shape, or form, be sure to promote the Regional Solutions Program because it's absolutely fantastic and it gives us a really good tool to utilize. Nate, do you want to kind of touch a little bit? There seems to be, John Huffman was putting together an Office of Rural, what? Can you, Nate?
That's a legislative, Representative Bonham is
Sure, is putting together.
So they have a rural caucus.
Yeah.
So they have legislators from at least all 4 of the caucuses, Republican, Democrat, Senate, House. And they were working on an agenda. Representative Bond was leading that at Director Huffman's urging. Yeah. And they're trying to pick on like 3 issues that they're going to, like the Coastal Caucus works together very effectively, bipartisan and bicameral. So they're trying to do the same thing with the Rural Caucus and come up with some initiatives that they can get behind.
Good, yeah. I think that could be really positive for us.
Is that mostly Eastern Oregon then?
No, it's coastal too.
Yeah, coastal,
Yeah.
there's rural also.
The rural is coastal.
I think he had, I think Caddy McEwen was the Democrat House member.
Yeah.
And then on the Senate side, you've got Hansel and Ropeland, I believe, from 2 caucuses.
Something that Sherman County may need some help with after I'm gone. This opportunity zone.
Oh, yes. Another good example, yeah.
Yeah, that's got me a little bit scared because I don't think our infrastructure's ready to take this possibility on. I think we're way underestimating what it could be and what it will be. So it's something that we really need some help on.
There's another real good example of lack of understanding rural.
It is.
Wheeler and Gilliam were left out of the Opportunity Zone program because essentially the people making the decisions said, well, nothing's going to happen there anyway. Sherman County got included because of the possibility of wind farms. That's what I was told.
That's only part of it. I don't think that all that money is going to go. That's something that Avangrid's really looking at because that's one way of financing some of the wind farms. But it could also be a whole raft of stuff that we have no idea coming at us.
You mean businesses that?
Businesses, like the one coming out of Portland that's wanting to locate in Wasco. And like the other truck stop, the third truck stop that's looking in Sherman County. Who knows what it's going to be, but it all has to do with investment and return on investment and all that other stuff. So, I'm sure Sherman County's going to need help wading through, because we're going to have people pushing us to take them under wraps.
Well, you recall Judge Schaefer tried to alert you to, it happened so fast.
It did,
And
almost overnight.
Yeah, I mean, and there was really not much conversation about who was going to get an opportunity zone or who wasn't. It was based on census tracts and low-income census tracts.
Right.
And for some reason, Gilliam didn't qualify, but the fact that you were next to Sherman, you could have qualified in a different category.
Exactly.
Same.
But I couldn't decipher virtually, the ways that we were going to be able to.
That's about the only decision that they made about the program early on. I mean, you couldn't tell what it was actually, the details of it at all.
We still don't.
Well, there's some money guys that I talked to some money guys that were working, I think, with Oregon. Maybe Nate knows more if he cares to add anything to this, but they were talking about setting up like investment funds. So if you have money from a capital gain and you want to put it into an opportunity zone to get your tax break, that they would aggregate those in some kind of an investment mechanism and then pick investments to put that money into.
But that hasn't been done yet.
Well, I don't know. I haven't heard about it. Nate, have you heard about any of these funds being set up?
Well, what I heard is that the rules came out this week, I'm not recalling, so the rules have been put out by the IRS for comment. And so we don't quite have rules. I know that David Brown, and I think everyone who's sort of been around the energy community knows who David Brown is, and Alan Alley has set up what they're calling the Obsidian Opportunity Fund. And they're really looking for large investors to do large projects. The other person that's really been focusing on this is Stephen Brooks, and I don't know if that's a name that's familiar to folks, but Stephen is a consultant who was retained by the large foundations in Oregon, and is also working with Business Oregon at this point with the goal of figuring out how they drive some of this investment to the rural communities that have opportunity zones. They're imagining sort of bundling together projects in something like the Agora platform, which was an online platform that was meant to connect funders with projects, something akin to that, but not exactly like that. And the way that Stephen described it in a conference I was recently at is that there'll be sort of, as he understands it, there'll be sort of two routes, right? So you could create a fund that's specific for a project. And so, a good example is there is a company who's prepared out of Wasco in Sherman County, who shall not be named, who was very interested in the Opportunity Fund, Opportunity Zone. If they went forward, what I'd imagine they'd do is they'd approach one of these third-party fund providers and set up an individual fund that then they would be able to funnel off capital gains from other assets into that fund and then use it for their project. And then the bigger, we also imagine there's probably going to be like bigger funds set up that are basically like, I'm getting all this stuff wrong, I'm not a financial person, but hedge funds, right? Where they'll go around and invest in large, probably real estate, private sector projects. There's a huge question. There's a lot of people who are talking about using this for infrastructure, like fundamental infrastructure. And there might be some projects that will work out because they're big enough it might have a return, like the Hood River Bridge, for example. But I think there's a lot of the experts I've heard say is they don't think that this is going to be the panacea for every rural infrastructure item. So, was that helpful at all? Was that what you were asking, Mike?
Yeah, it was. Right.
So what I would suggest, if you want real information on this, is to get Stephen Brooks to come and speak to your commissions, or come to the Tri-County Court. And he is super accessible. I've been abusing his willingness to speak to people a little bit too much. Every time anyone asks me a question about opportunity zones, I hit reply and add him in the CC line. But he is, like I said, on contract, I think now with Business Oregon, and is more than willing to sort of chat about the mechanics of these opportunity zones.
So could you send me his email?
Certainly. How about I send Kayla a note right here, since I have her email handy, and ask her to get it out to all the courts.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Opportunity zones, like probably we could spend months talking about those.
Well,
I didn't put it on here just simply because there were two of us that weren't really involved.
I think it's something we need to talk about it in future.
Yeah.
Tri-County.
Yeah.
Whoever is here.
Okay. All right. Good, Judge.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. I really appreciate you coming in. Okay, let's move into Frontier Telnet, Frontier Regional 911. Mike Smith?
Yes.
Come on up.
So I provided you all with an update on, update on the overview of marketing for Frontier Telnet.
Sure.
Something that I presented to you a while back, and just to give you an idea of how we're pursuing those opportunities, I added some comments into there under asterisk. So, under the executive summary, I've I won't go through that again because you have that, and I think everyone at the table understands what Frontier Telnet is. And originally we listed target customers as 911 center contracted in consolidation, school districts, for E-rate, internet service providers, for broadband and transport, commercial customers, cellular phone companies, medical clinics, Department of Transportation, federal departments, state parks, and the state radio project. And so each one of those has a bit of an update. You know, talking first about the 911 center contracting and consolidation.
Could I interrupt here? Do you have an extra copy of that?
Sure.
Or two.
Thank you.
Oh, not two, no. Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. Here. I didn't forget to make too many copies.
Thank you, Mike. Excuse me.
You're welcome. It's known now that currently we're talking with Wasco County. They are curious what Frontier Regional 911 can do, so that they can have some options. It's really based on, we talked to them 3 years ago, and they decided not to go forward, but the Dallas City Police experienced a 45% unexpected cost increase for services, so that made them think, well, maybe we shouldn't be talking about consolidation or what we could do to partner to save funds. So we're doing that now. The Regional 911 meeting was last week, and decided to move forward. And so we're doing some research and putting some things together for the smaller group to discuss to bring back to the full board. We had also gone to Granite County because they had asked us, because the city of John Day was saying, look, we're taking care of all the costs and all the responsibility. A lot of the partners that they had weren't really paying a portion they felt was fair. So they said, you know, within a year, we're just going to stop doing this and figure this out. So we put together a proposal where they were spending, I think they were spending about $250,000 roughly out of their budget to fund their 911, and we were able to bring them a proposal that, as long as everything stayed the same, of course, was about $8,000 to $10,000 a year. So obviously remarkably different. And that was met with, you know, what about our jobs? So they had a group that was going to get together and figure out a way to make this work. I'm not sure any movement has happened, so it would be incredibly difficult. So there is a good possibility that they may be coming along as well. We'll see where that is. We've been there to be helpful, but not pressing, and certainly not just to take over something. It's all about them asking for the partnership. So, and then they realize that still exists. Any questions?
No, but you know, I think just to clarify, we're just there, I guess you might say, in an advisory role and offering up what would be a solution.
Yeah, provide an option,
Right.
and trying to keep local control as local as possible. And so that they can make a choice instead of desperate, you know. School districts in ESD, Frontier Telnet serves all the schools except for Sherman County right now. That bid is coming up in January, so we'll have an opportunity to enter a bid there. So we're continuing to serve in all the other school districts. In fact, we had a request from Spray to raise fees, which we're absolutely willing to do. Our bid is for no less than a certain amount, so we can make adjustments if so needed. But for no less than cost for the entire amount of bandwidth, which is distributed by the ESD and Condon, and then we have a transport agreement to go to all the other schools. And so, internet service for providers for broadband and transport. We do currently provide multiple ISPs with transport and broadband. The main one right now would be RTG in the 3 counties. There are others we provide as well, like Blue Mountain in Grant County and a few other places. A side note on that is Sherman County, a few months back, went out for, well, more than a few months, probably 4 months ago, an RFP for internet services on a fiber to the home project for each of the cities. It's something I've been bringing in, because Sherman County has fiber assets in the ground, I've been bringing out ISPs for some time, talking about this kind of an idea, and one of them had done the work, trying to figure out what it would really cost. So one company came to Morrow, said it's going to cost about $750,000, and wanted the city to cough up about 300 grand, 275 to 300. And the city of Morrow would like to have done that, but just found that would be cost prohibitive. So the company that I had been working with had looked at each of the cities and realized if we treated them all as one city instead of individuals, it became pretty cost effective to get them all done at once. So that pricing seemed much more affordable. And then Mid-Columbia Economic Development District put out an RFP for Sherman County and the cities to be able to provide fiber to the home projects and see what that would cost. And you had 4 respondents. I think one actually missed the deadline by a day, unfortunately. But GorgeNet was chosen, and with a mix of funds from each city, which paid about 10% of the cost of what it would take to install there. Some funds from Sherman County, as well as a large portion of the project from GorgeNet themselves, and a grant from Regional Solutions. They put it all together and it made a lot of sense. Forgive me, Judge, I can't think of the total. I stayed outside that project to make sure we didn't.
It was 200,000 for Regional Solutions.
Correct.
270,000 from Sherman County and the cities, I think.
In the cities, exactly. The entire project was.
And GorgeNet the same amount. They paid half.
They paid half.
50%.
Correct. So they found a way to make it work for everyone. And so, in fact, they really only able to do that because of the investment that Sherman County made into that. So it'll be just a fantastic, it's a fantastic story.
And they've completed Morrow.
They've completed Morrow. They're actually doing drops today. They're inspecting today in Morrow, the rest of the week, I think. I got a call as well. I just said, please don't be the first person.
So is the service out to ODOT through GorgeNet?
Yeah. The service down to ODOT right now is through Windway.
Oh.
So, but that still utilizes the fiber that's in the county. And Windway ended up doing that because of the amount of time it takes to become a vendor for the state, and they needed that project right away. Windway had that already, so we stepped back and allowed them to do that so they could serve where it made sense. We have a partnership right now with Windwave as well at the experiment station for OSU, and we have a sharing agreement with that because they do a portion of it, we do a portion of it, and we share that connection, but the experiment station is then served. A side note to that, on a side note, in a comparative, the experiment station was getting 2 T1s, which is 1.5 megs up and down, which is these days remarkably slow. You couldn't do Netflix on it. But they were paying, I think, $600 per T1.
Wow.
So their costs went down remarkably, and their bandwidth went up exponentially. So and that is the goal of what we're all here for.
Are they served wirelessly then?
They're served, yes, they're served through a fixed wireless that comes up from MCP.
Okay. Is MCP using our system now?
Not yet, but I know they will be. We're going to go to fiber. So that's the idea, is to be that middle mile of those things.
So one vendor was selected over there. Do you have like a pricing cap or,
I didn't bring their flyer, but it's available.
Yeah.
Yes, they quoted in their proposal what they would charge for their rates.
Okay. Is there any discussion about maybe updating of equipment over a period of time or anything like that? I mean, that's one of the
Those are in
issues
your operational agreements.
Are they? Okay.
They
Should-
have
well, should-
service
Yeah,
abilities
yeah.
at each one of the prices.
So-
They're pretty fast.
Right. So it's, going to be one provider there that has some sidebars on it that.
Yes.
Okay.
So, for instance, their 25 meg service
Mhm.
is $44.95. Their 100 meg service is $49.95.
Right.
Then they have a business version of that, which I think is only,
89, I believe.
yeah, I think something
it's-
that's less.
Yeah, I've got.
It's surprisingly less. plus telephone service is $15. You can keep your number because you have the ability to port over services for that. That only took 7 complaints from me to the FCC about porting numbers because Verizon wouldn't do it. They filed a lot of complaints about it, they finally did it. But now it's available. So, that's really fantastic, as well as they want to use the wireless service and be a provider on the wireless that goes out to all those in the rural areas of Sherman County as well. So we have some form of competition, which is great. So that being said, Weeder County, because there's an upgrade there as well, we have roughly a gigabit in every city available to use for some months now. And we've been encouraging, on the verge of strong-arming, RTG to please use this. And we've met with some limited success. They're beginning to do this just now, but it's been very, very slow. And it's been very, very frustrating to have vastly more bandwidth than you need right now available and not being implemented. So Weeder County has decided to go to an RFP modeled on what Sherman County did and select a provider. Made sure to get those out to the providers that have already asked for those, but it is being advertised now. So that'll be really, it has provided, because they've invested in an upgrade, it's providing the ability to choose a responsible ISP that serves the entire county. So that's a bit on the ISP providers. Any questions inside
Is
that?
that just for Sherman County?
Or you can ask at the end.
Never got a red look. This is the Orange Net's Sherman County page.
Oh, there, exactly. If you go, that's what Mike just did. If you go to GorgeNet's website, you can go under residential services, and there's a section there called Sherman Fiber Project. And it has all the pricing for that, as well as the ability to sign up and say, yes, please come our direction. So it's really fantastic. But there's a $99 installation fee.
I'm having trouble getting off of CenturyLink to go to GorgeNet.
Well, you won't be soon.
My speed is so slow that it will hardly even turn on the table on the laptop or anything else, so. I'm paying for
100 megs for $50.
That's really a remarkable price. Again, only because of the investment made by the county would that be possible. And in comparative, I think I can say this, right? They really are probably going to buy about a gig from Sherman County to serve the entire county. Weeder County has that in every town. So this is a comparative, and they're running fiber. So the amount of bandwidth, because you share it, not everybody has 100 megs, not everybody's on the internet at the same time. It's really kind of hard to explain that, but you might have a ratio of service. So for every meg they buy, they share it with between 5 and 20 households. And that's how that works. It's just like counties building roads, because roads and the internet are the same thing. Counties don't build roads for the number of cars on the road. You build for the usage. If every car got on the road, you just have jams, but because you share it all the time. You're not on the road all the time. Internet is the same way, if that makes sense. If that's okay, moving on to commercial customers. Frontier Telnet, we don't really want to be getting out in front of internet providers. We want to be that middle mile to provide. It's always been the goal. It's always been in the mission ever since its creation, to provide that ability for a business to come in and be an ISP. However, when an ISP can't get the job done, we've always stepped in. The most recent examples are in Weeder County. The car dealership in Fossil was actually being threatened by the manufacturer because they could not get fast enough bandwidth. And a few different providers had tried. So we stepped in and provided all the bandwidth they needed, and could provide vastly more if they would like, but this serves their needs. I mean, it actually does threaten the livelihood of a dealership, because you've got to be able to talk to the dealer instantly when you put in that service request for repayment. So I work for an IT company that actually happens to work with dealerships, so I understand the complexities of that and the importance of it. Another one would be Grey Guns. And 3 miles before you get into Sprague is a world-class provider of Sig Sauer replacement parts for competition shooting. It is a big, geeky deal, and remarkable to have that. And they simply couldn't do business. It was worldwide business, and they were getting 1 to a half a meg all the time. Their antennas had been replaced, they couldn't get it to work, and they were saying, we gotta move. If we can't get bandwidth, we gotta move. So we set up our crews. I know I climbed that hill. It's quite a hill at 108 degrees. Should have brought some water. And, took a look at it and figured it out, and we had our IT guys go out there and ended up replacing the equipment, and we could get them easily up to 80 megs if they wanted it. They wanted 15, we got them 15. They want 100, we give them 100. It all depends on what they need, and we stepped in, and they've been very happy. I've stopped by a couple different times, and they're quite pleased. So we've taken away that problem they had. But I would say if there was a responsible ISP that stepped in, I think we would probably turn over those accounts so that we can continue to be the middle mile and not compete with a business that should be able to make money. And it's a board decision, but so that's really how we work with commercial customers. There's also the hemp processor in Grass Valley, needed internet right away. So we still had the microwave set up on the old school building. We just turned it on and got them internet. We've been providing it for over a year. And I've stopped by a few times just to make sure they've got everything they needed. And they're very happy. In fact, the entire business is working off, I think it's a 10 meg service. And I'm saying, are you sure? And yeah, we've got 20 people on computers. It works great. So, okay, just tell us if you need us to turn the knob, and we're glad to do that. And then the Grass Valley market, one of the deals of the hemp producer coming in there was that we're going to open the market again. And they called me up and said, look, we can't get internet from anybody. Nobody will show up. What can we do? And we knew that GorgeNet had just been selected, so we did not want to step in front of them. So we did a partnership where they were able to set up wireless gear using the fiber that's in the Grass Valley City Hall right now and get them internet before their opening day. And it's worked very, very well. And then when the fiber is in Grass Valley, which they're next, they'll be connected up to this, and we'll simply, they'll be allowed to be the ISP for that, which makes it viable for them to actually be there. A lot of movement on cell phone companies right now. Have 3 different cellular companies working with right now, asking for towers, looking at tower sites and asking for bandwidth, which is perfect for what we have. And we're well placed to be in that market, which I think is really a large part of the future we do as a middle mile provider. It also works because, again, in the executive summary we're talking about, or in this docket we're talking about, Frontier Telnet builds to a mission critical standard. So those towers have generators, they have, they're fenced, they're well protected, where other sites just might be able to get you enough bandwidth. We build to a level that makes sure that they're not going to go down. We're already servicing medical clinics and working with some telemedicine, working with Greater Oregon Behavioral Health Incorporated. Would like to do a few different projects with Frontier Telnet because we have coverage in those areas, so I'm excited about that kind of an idea. Working through what that means, part of it might be providing internet service to a Medicaid home that doesn't have internet service, so they can do telemedicine with a simple tablet instead of doing check-ins and having to drive so far. Using a lot of the money in transportation, you can just simply do a check-in there. Even if you have a traveling wellness worker, wouldn't even necessarily have to be a nurse. It could be simply some level of health worker making those stops at all those places instead of having them all drive in at great expense. Department of Transportation, that's what Mike was asking about, being served by the fiber in Morrow. We've made some offers to the federal agencies, BLM, Fish and Wildlife. There's an agency that was thinking about using the radios on the river, which would make a lot of sense with all these fires and things that happen, everything got canceled. And they're waiting for things to calm down to take a second look at that. The Cottonwood Tower will serve the Cottonwood State Park, not only with radio emergency services coverage, but one cell company wants to be there, as well as the Learning Center. is asking for actually a large amount of bandwidth. I mean, I think they said they wanted up to 200 megs,
Right.
which we would be gladly provide to them.
What's the time frame for starting that?
That is an excellent question, Tom. That has been Achilles' heel. I did the most foolish thing and said, I didn't even get this done by fire. So, oh, Lord. So the archaeologists for the NEPA thing are supposed to be calling me this week to go out, probably next week to look. That has taken months. It should have been a 2-month project. We're in our 4th month of it. And they say, once we have that, we should be fine. But
So maybe this year?
this calendar year, no. No, unfortunately not. And I really hasten to give any kind of date. I have learned and got burned by that lesson. I'll just give updates as to where we are on the project. We still have the assets provided by the state. They're itching for the bandwidth, of course. And I really do believe we can make that. We just got to get through our NEPA process, and then we can, because it depends on weather, frankly, and I want to answer that accurately. So if we really have a mild winter and a builder is okay with that, yes. Maybe not within the year, but sometime in there. If they're comfortable working in those conditions, again, it depends, El Nino, maybe, but if it's wet, they're not going to want to be out there. If it's snow, they're not going to be out there. So that makes it hard. And then, state radio project, we already all know that the state radio project paid to get the connection into the switch. And it's working quite well to have the state's radios on there. They also want to be on the Cottonwood Tower to expand the radio payment as well. As well as, and I go back to the state parks, they were very interested in using the radios on our network because right now they had to actually make phone calls to 911. They could simply use our network and talk directly to 911 or any of the deputies in all of the counties, as well as other state parks conceivably. So that would be a big asset for them. Again, I've handed this up before. Discuss about market challenging and our selling position. But I just kind of want to give you an update on what I'd handed out before as to, okay, those are the customers we targeted. Where are we with those? And try to talk as fast but as clear as I can. So,
You're doing fine.
questions?
Well, I guess to go back to the internet service provider situation, specifically, I guess, we're working at, does that pretty much tie you guys to one company? I mean, who, will they own the fiber? Is there an operations and maintenance agreement that they have?
No, the only thing they'll own is
the capacity on the line?
their lines within the city.
Okay.
But they'll own the line to you.
They own the line within the city that goes to each of the houses. They're just hooking into our fiber at City Hall or at the courthouse. We haven't decided really.
Actually, maybe just in a vault. We may just stay with the vault that we're already connected to.
Okay.
So the answer to that question is they own they have a franchise agreement or will have a franchise agreement for the lines inside the cities. But the RFP did not cover wireless connectivity exclusively. So they're very interested in being a wireless provider. We've talked to the court for the last couple of months about it, and they're very interested in getting an update to the existing equipment because it's 6, going on 7 years old. The new versions of that are much faster and will provide much better signal, especially once you take everyone off the wireless inside the cities, or pretty much everyone. And there may be a couple of stragglers, people, but what a wonderful choice to have.
Yeah.
So
you could
secondarily,
something like fiber to the rural residents too.
well, say a version of it. I would say no less than 10 megs for sure. But your distance to a tower could be 20 pretty easily. But those antennas that we've been testing, the new style, all regularly run at 80 megs. It doesn't mean everybody could run at 80 megs, but if you send them 20, you should be able to do that. Again, depending on your distance. We have 2 people right now in Sherman County that are 26 miles away from their antenna, which you probably shouldn't be less than 9. I'm sitting next to 2 fellows here that are 3 miles from the antenna. One, okay. Should have absolutely no problem getting a 20 meg connection at all. And Gorge GorgeNet already serves a fixed wireless system, just like this, so they know how to do that. And they have a long history of good service.
So, Michael, will they pay for the upgraded antennas, or will Frontier Telnet?
So I've asked if the court, Gilliam County right now is looking at doing the same thing, doing an upgrade to their existing wireless, and then they would pay a user fee, like they do today. I talked to Dan Bub about that, because he said, well, we could go out and do that. They would just kind of onesie-twosie do it here and there. It might be easier if the court went ahead and did that and provided a fee as they do now. It just depends on if they approve that quote or not.
Would they have to upgrade the receiver at the house?
They would. Yeah. They would. And that's what they're doing in Wheeler County right now.
That would be part of the service.
It would be the provider's choice whether or not they charged for that, or because as Frontier Telnet, I don't think it's our duty to tell them how to do that.
We're charging for the hookup in the homes in the city.
So if you were to change service, yeah,
$90.
anybody can change service, okay? That so you would, yeah. If that answers the question.
Yeah.
Okay. So it really is a twofer. You get fiber to the home, which is Frontier County's dream, and better service outside the cities, which is very, very hard. But you have a company that has good experience doing that. That can make reasonable expectations.
Okay, I guess my question is, it really ties you into one provider in the area. You don't.
Well, in the wireless scheme, we haven't done that.
Okay.
Frontier Telnet is agnostic as far as that scheme. We've said any provider that wants to provide service, and we'll sell you bandwidth. Let's figure out how to do that. I think we
Well, I have
may
no
have a
problem
different
with one
approach.
provider, as long as you have a good, a good contract with them that, specifies a pricing cap and updating of equipment.
Well, you were talking about developing a system that any provider could use.
Correct, yeah. And that's what we're talking about now.
Yeah.
Any, on the wireless side, yes. Even on the fiber side, if for some reason somebody wanted to run more fiber over, that would just be inconceivable. But there is no exclusive as far as the fiber that runs through Sherman County to one provider. It has to do with the intercity bill and the project we're doing now.
I mean,
Is that clear?
GorgeNet might be a little upset if we allowed somebody else to run fiber around through it.
I think they'd be able to.
That wouldn't be us, that would be the city.
Yeah.
That's the
Well,
city's problem.
I just can't imagine they would do such a thing. It would be foolhardy.
But that would be, that could be left up to the provider if they want to make their own investment and run fiber right next to fiber that's already coming to them. That's their call.
I'm not sure. I've certainly seen middle mile and long haul providers being right next to each other, but in the city, next to each other. I'm not sure I've experienced that. Mike, you have any? I haven't seen that.
I haven't seen that either.
Because the most expensive internet is to the home, the most expensive way to serve.
If CenturyLink would ever get off their high horse and upgrade their system, then they're already to a lot of the homes in the city. It's just a matter of trying to get that high-speed internet through that copper wire, and it doesn't work that right.
Well, through a copper wire, there's what's called a DOCSIS on copper wire. Of course, that's the cable, coaxial style, like from the cable TV. You can get 100 megs out of that pretty easy. We looked at the plant that exists in Morrow, and Home Telephone owns it right now. And they were considering that, and they could do 100 meg service. We provide them the bandwidth, certainly, but there's no profit in that. There's just simply far, far too thin of margins. And part of the operational agreements included, I think, in your agreement, I believe eventually, was the discussion of charging a franchise agreement so that those dollars would go towards upkeep and expansion of the fiber. And I don't think you start paying a franchise fee, or they start paying a franchise fee until they hit 70% penetration, which means everybody who's gone in. So.
Over here, as far as the wireless that we're putting in, the components that we have right now are, well, single user. And the upgrade that we're looking at doing in Gilliam County would actually create a multi-user system. So, the ISP will own the component that sits inside the house, but it could be ISP A, B, or C who would have the ability to hook to the multi-user equipment that is on
I mean,
the
the high's
Frontier
going to be used for different ISPs.
It could be used by different ISPs.
We were talking about that.
I think that's been kind of a.
On the wireless side, yes,
Yeah.
that's correct.
I think that's been a bit of a, one of those things that I think we have some issues with here, because a lot of the ISPs are really saying, well, thanks, but no thanks, unless we're, simply because, the revenue source is so low that.
Well, yeah.
Well, it would be great to give RTG some competition.
I know.
Our service calls might be a little more polite.
One can only hope, but
Yeah.
I can't promise.
RTG had it just about to hear with them, so it's, and I don't mind that being on the record.
And we've been exceedingly clear with the complaints. I talk to them sometimes 3 times a day, saying, what about this person, what about that person? Very specific. You need to fix this, you need to do that. There's no sense, I should not really be doing that, but it's a service to the community and a plea to have better service. So I think the RFP process is fantastic. It's brought in some really thoughtful proposals. And the idea of exclusives is the county's choice. And how do you handle that? You know, an example I think would be in Sherman County, you have the franchise agreement with the garbage company, because you can't have 3 garbage companies, they would all go broke. So you award based on performance and proposal every 7 years, I think is the, maybe every 10, 7 or 10 years, I can't remember. And you're able to hold your feet to the fire by holding back any kind of cost raise. 1 year, in fact, they weren't performing on their hours at the transfer station or their pickups, and so we held back. We didn't give them the 1% or the 1.5%. And then they performed, and the next year they got it. So that is a way to work with a single franchisee to make sure they perform. Okay? Any other questions? I'm sitting right here, I can take it.
Judge, may I ask,
Yeah, yes.
for the record, Les Rivera, and I do have a few questions and actually 3 questions, and I'd like to offer up a suggestion to the members of the courts here. Let me take the suggestion first, and that is, sitting here listening, I've thought about this on occasion before too, but the Frontier Telnet board essentially sits here at these meetings, and I'm really thinking that the future notice for Tri-County Courts meetings needs to include mention of that. And that's the way it is. It's structured so that the 3 judges or the existing board. And I think you need to at least ponder that. The 2 questions I have, or 3 that I have for you, Mike, is one, it may not seem all that important to you at this point. It is to me, although I have an accurate understanding of things. But what date was this handout originally made available to either Frontier Telnet or to the 3 courts?
You know, I have to look back, Les.
Do you have just a general idea?
Well, I'm kind of thinking it was May of 17.
Okay, so last year.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I actually updated the document and forgot to write down the date that was on it before I saved it, and then it became
Okay.
the modern date.
Since you mentioned that, I would encourage you, I think such future date, it's really easy to put at the bottom of it, in real small type, the actual date that something was produced, and I would encourage you to do that.
The other thing I would say is, I'm not sure, is there a quorum of the 911 board as well? If you have every commissioner here?
No.
Because Joe's on the board.
Well, the 911 is a little different.
It's 9. 9? Or 11?
8. There's 8. Yeah, there's 4 commissioners from the 4 counties and 4 sheriffs from the 4 counties.
Okay, so you almost have one.
Second question is, and this is an important one, as I'm looking at it in terms of the overall use of the marketing plan, but is this document that you've used today considered to be what I've asked you about in writing just recently, the functional or approved marketing plan that Frontier Telnet does or may not have in place? I don't know if there's one in place actually or not, but that's what I'm asking. Can this be looked upon as being a functional and approved marketing plan that the Telnet board has given authorization to be pursued?
So I'm not sure if and forgive me because I'm saying I'm not certain, the board itself asked who are our customers and where do we market to? So this is what I produced, gave both to the board and to Sherman County Court because they asked. So Frontier Telnet's marketing and direction is done at every board meeting. So I know personally, I've never been a fan of 15-year plans. They're very dusty and hard to find after the first year. So Frontier Telnet has always had a history of continually discussing what its marketing is, what its direction is, where its funds are coming from at every meeting. So I gathered who their target customers and target customers are. And then we continually talk about those things almost at every meeting. Does that answer the, I don't think they've actually said, we need a functional or formal marketing. They haven't asked that. That's a question for the board.
I take that as the explanation that you're providing, but it's not a yes or no answer whether or not that document represents a functional or approved plan. But I'll take it as it is.
So I guess the answer to that is, to my knowledge, the board has never asked for a formal marketing plan. They've asked who are our customers and who do we market to. Okay. So this is what was provided to them.
Okay,
so,
the third question I have, and then
okay.
I'm just asking, does the board, or Telnet, to your understanding, does Telnet and its board have a business plan in place for overall, directing overall its actual activities as an entire organization? Is there a business plan in place?
Well, I would have to say that there's a historic business plan, that has been in operation for 17 years. I think we could go back to probably 2010, 2011, that historic plan changed in bringing in retail. Prior to that, there was really no retail that was involved with Frontier Telnet. Business plan again was sales to schools, supplying a service that they didn't have. The health clinics, supplying a service that they didn't have, and supplying public safety, communications, infrastructure.
And internet to the government buildings.
Well, yeah, and government. So really, that was the basis of the entire operation, and it was historic. I think it was around 2010, 2011 that the goal was to bring in a retail.
Further than that. Well, yeah,
that's when RTG was
going back to 2000.
Late 90s, actually.
Late 90s.
We started doing 91 together.
Well, yeah,
was
but
one of the
retail,
funds.
we did not supply to an ISP.
No.
Yeah.
That when you started.
Yeah, I think that come in, based on the historic, was around 2010 or 11.
Maybe a little bit earlier.
When did RTG start?
2012.
2012.
Okay, so.
And there were a few earlier ones that were, the bandwidth was made available. Certainly Rob Meyer could speak more to that. But I'm trying to think of the names. There was like Community Broadband was one of them. I think some of those were in Buter County. That just had no, had that people were trying and trying to figure out a way to serve in a highly rural area. Which none of that went very well.
So, when you ask about a business plan, I mean, again, the goal is to sell to those same individuals the entire time. The issue that we run into was it's an increase in demand that has gone all along. And fulfilling that increase of demand to the same business people, the same entities that we've been selling to, has created this need for fiber, different ways of expanding the pieces of equipment. The pieces that we're talking about that Gilliam County has in place, about the maximum that can go through it, and this would be all the users that would be on there. This one component that is sending out to you and Mike Weimer and all the others could only hold about 10 megabits. Without the new component being put in, which would hold 200, allowing more bandwidth to fly back and forth. So I guess, you know, the business plan would not change. Business plan is still the same. It's just new equipment, new components, and whether there was a program that was put in place that would have developed a replacement program. No, that wasn't there. And it's very seldom in any government
Well,
operation.
can I offer up a sort of a closing observation here, and then I'll try to be quiet. And that is, that, you know, we just heard a little while ago from Mike and his new entity. I imagine, to be fair about it, Mike, there are others out there too that could offer up that, and I'm certainly not pointing at myself, but others out there that could offer up that type of services to be on the table about it. But nonetheless, what I'm getting to here is, in terms of a closing thought, it seems to me that someone like Mike and Laura could easily put together the two documents that need to be on the table and before the Frontier Telnet Board and the three courts on a continual basis, and it can be looked upon as being something that's a work in progress and can be amended. And that's one, the overall business plan that Mac and others have talked about for I don't know how long, and two, the marketing plan. Being that there's versions of it, there's 3 or 4 versions I've seen of late that have been passed to me courtesy of my inquiries of late. Seems to me all of that could be 2 pieces of work that are in place that you could easily make available to folks like myself and others that have been asking for them. And I really think they need to be.
Again, I'm going to ask you now, okay? What do you see? What is different? What are you seeing this business plan be? Be specific on what you would like to see with it.
Judge, I'm not
You
the
know,
expert.
I'm having a hard time grasping this because,
I know it's a
you know,
difficult situation to think of, but bottom line is the overall business plan to me would be such as a model that's in place for a normal business, saying these are what we're gonna go after, these are the types of aspects that we're trying to provide, detailing that, and make a component of it, the marketing plan perhaps, rather than maybe have it a separate situation. But it also details the structure of everything involved. It's pretty confusing to me, even at all the meetings that I've sat through, that and they remain in existence, the 2 entities that are involved, 3 if you count ESD to begin with, and what their actual functions are and what they do. Because of all of the and it's a natural situation to be confused about because they all interact with each other. But the bottom line is...
Stop right there. They don't, okay? They
do
don't interact.
They do in the average
They do not,
person's thinking.
okay? And this is where I just can't seem to get that. They do not interact. You've got Frontier Regional 911 over here that does public safety communications.
But you have a sign-off on that.
Huh?
I'm interrupting you, but the Telnet board has a sign-off apparently on what the 911 board does.
Because these people you can't push a radio and talk. It's like this phone. If I don't have the ability to hook to AT&T, it's worthless. It's an Apple phone, but I gotta have an AT&T tower for it to hook to. Does that correlate? Do they go together? No, they utilize each other. So you have Frontier Regional 911 over here that utilizes an infrastructure that is Frontier Telnet. Frontier Telnet's infrastructure utilizes internet protocol that this phone utilizes, and so do the radios that the police officers and firefighters all carry. That same internet protocol can be utilized for sending broadband out to the schools. Radio, infrastructure, schools.
We're leaving
So
one component out
you've
of
got
it, too, that's important.
Frontier Regional 911, Frontier Telnet, ESD.
But-
Separate.
Is the clinic separate too?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. It's like the schools, clinics, government,
So maybe
separate.
Maybe to clarify a little bit is that the mission of Frontier Telnet, which has always been the same mission. I think it's very well put. It was the original mission. It stayed that way. It was on the website. Is not for internet sales. That's not what Frontier Telnet is. It has always been for mission critical emergency services, radio for police, fire, EMS. That's what it is. What it found was, because there was a need for internet available as well, and emergency services needed some level of internet, they started putting it on top of there. And if they could sell some broadband while providing the service, that is a benefit to the community while leveraging existing assets whose goal is emergency services radios. That's it. Every decision, every upgrade has been made because of the need for emergency services, and it so happens to benefit other uses as well, but that's not the prime motivator. Fiber in Sherman County, quite literally, was to make sure that we had a mission-critical level of connection to the digital switch. It also, as a benefit, served to provide an enormous amount of broadband to come into the county, because varying to fiber, why have one fiber when you can have 92? It just makes sense. The hole is the most expensive part of that. So all those decisions for every upgrade, every expansion of the system has been considered for emergency services. Wheeler County got a special grant, which is slightly outside this, but not really. It was to connect to the jobs that are in the Birch building, which we did almost immediately, but we're able to, in a very efficient manner, not only do that, but provide expanded internet and radio coverage in Wheeler County, so still meeting inside that mission. But Frontier Telnet is a single entity that just provides connectivity. Who uses it are those agencies outside of it and separate. Does that make more sense?
I think I understand what both you and Judge Schaefer are saying. And I don't mean to belabor the point or argue with you.
Everybody wants to be combining all
I'm
these.
just trying to make sure to have a better,
They're different.
trying to have an accurate understanding, but I see where you come from. And I want to also say that I'm not trying to undermine the work of the 9/11 dispatch boards. I think it's one of the better organized and most valuable resources we have around here. But at the same time, I still see a need, as I indicated, for someone like a Mike or those that have much more of an ability to centralize their thinking on this type of matter, to put before the board, even if it's just a basic one-pager, operating plan or business plan and the marketing plan in such a manner as the average person, the Joe Blow on the street that doesn't have any idea that all you good folks have, and fortunately myself have courtesy of my previous work. And so that they can walk in, pick it up, and have a lot more readily ability to understand what's out there. And right now, Steve and Lynn and Gary and Mike and Mike, they don't. And that's why there's the continuing controversy there is. And I really think
exactly
a good
right.
PR person could help you improve upon that, is what I'm saying. Does
Because
that make sense?
there's a whole lot of rumor discussion of everything that's going on out there.
Well, I
And
don't know if it's
no
rumor
matter what you
discussion
say,
as much as
there's
it's
others
listening.
out there that want to pass it on. I'm going to give you another example here.
Okay.
Conversations a month ago with AT&T, okay? They want to put in, they've got 3 things that they do. Direct wireless, that would be broadband internet service to your home. Cellular service. They're also getting into public safety communications through FirstNet. They're going to be able to do it on one tower. They're going to utilize the same components, the same everything to deliver this
I've been
information.
reading about that.
Everything will be the same. How are we going to differentiate that out? We're not. It's all going to be the same. And that's Frontier Telnet now. It's all combined and supplying these for the 911, and then supplying government, schools, retail, what I named before, healthcare. I said retail.
Well, you
And
know,
so
Judge,
it's hard because everybody keeps dragging this into that, And they keep dragging this into this, and trying to constantly separate it has been really, really difficult. None of these could work without this setting here. And when we talk about what it is that we're doing, we did it all with the wireless system before that hit capacity. Got to the point to where the demands of these things out here were growing, and this couldn't handle it anymore. Hence the reason for fiber. Now, we don't know when that was gonna happen. We didn't know. I didn't know when I come into office that we were gonna, within 2 years. So, thinking, when Mike put it in and Laura, they thought, geez, this probably could last forever based on what it is that we use. But nobody realized the amount of bandwidth that was gonna be required. And right now, I don't know what's gonna happen 2 years from now. And it's hard to sit here and have a marketing plan because I didn't know that AT&T was gonna come talking to us at the time.
Well, I know one
We
thing.
hoped, but we didn't, we don't know.
I hear what you're saying. I know one thing, though, that I've learned just in the last couple of days.
It's frustrating.
It's really going to be important to overcome the frustration involved. And that's being able to get the clinic up here to do two things. Use the Telnet services through the Rural Health Coordinating Council and OHSU that they can use, and allow for email use of their own website more than they have now. And that, I know that I'm talking a little bit different, maybe.
Yeah, it costs them money.
But the bottom line is that's what the average person is looking at, it's because it ties directly to keeping Summit Springs on board here in Condon, as I look at it up here. And down in the north end of the county, it's looking at helping to preserve the clinic we have down there to some degree with waste management.
But
Now, am I making any kind of
You're
sense?
bringing that to this board. You need to take it to that board. It's their money that's gonna have to be spent to get that accomplished. It's
Wow.
not, we've given them the connectivity. They can do all of that, but they're gonna have, it's
I will be
fairly
taking
expensive
that.
for them to do that.
To both boards.
Right, and then, there's been a whole lot of talk about, somebody had mentioned the fact of home health care. One of those doctor kits, one of those doctor kits are about 30 grand. For them to be able to do that, for you to be able to
That's why
take
we
them all and
need-
do this.
that's why we need to
For
be
them all
on
to,
Senator
and it's
Wyden's-
like,
That's why we need to be on Wyden's and Merkley's, whomever's back there, radar, like we could have been yesterday. I know the
Yeah.
reasons why we weren't there, but we
Yeah.
should have.
well, yeah.
So to pull this back around just to Frontier Telnet though, its mission has always been its mission, it's never changed. It's an elegant, simple idea. The board asked for who are we marketing to, who are the potential customers. That's been provided, we discuss it at every single meeting.
Every meeting.
But Frontier Telnet's business is very simple. Its network is remarkably complicated. It is an incredible network of continually moving parts. And, Tom has asked me many times, well, what does a meg cost? I'm like, well, where? Because it's all different depending on where. It's wildly different operating costs because of the challenges of all three counties. And it is an incredible system.
Well, what I can say, and just to kind of, I
Sure.
don't mean to interrupt you, we are in the process right now of determining, what does it make cost us into each individual location. I'm not sure whether this is a positive thing for us to do, but we're gonna do it. So we know exactly what it costs the meg to run to Rob's place in Sprague, a meg to Tom, and, whether it'll be something beneficial to us, not really sure yet.
Okay, thank
I
you
think
for
it may
letting
be,
me ask the questions.
More troublesome than it's
Well,
worth.
and one other thing, you had said something that I just disagree with. You had said, hey, I've had all these different marketing reports. There's only one. There's only ever been one. That's,
Well, then.
I don't know who it was produced by.
Well,
Certainly by me.
what I'm saying is there's various versions of the one.
Well, yeah, they're
I've
actually
seen
still-
four in the last 3 or 4
It's still the
years.
same things on there that's always been on there, Les.
I could claim responsibility for one of those, but the three others, I don't know where they would have come from.
It's frustrating to me, and I probably showed it. So
By
I
the way, is Nate
apologize, I
still-
apologize for showing it, I try not to be that way, but it gets,
Is Nate
this
still on the
particular
line?
thing is a little bit difficult. What's that?
Is Nate still on the line?
Yes, he is.
Oh,
Nate?
okay. I just wondered if he was still on the line.
I think he is.
Okay.
Yeah, I dropped the phone a couple of times on him.
Next meeting.
Next meeting, so let me take up my calendar here. I think it's in January would be the schedule, to bring us to January,
You're a fossil.
in Fossil.
Bring your own coffee.
3.4.
I would say January 23rd or January 30th.
Look at this guy, just grinning.
So, so what date? You two are, well, you three are for sure, so whatever.
So if it's in pocket one, we just let them set it.
Okay?
Make sure the sun's shining.
Yeah, yeah, and there's no ice on the road.
Yeah, I can flat guarantee in Fossil it'll be fine. It's between Morrow and
Yes.
Fossil.
What did you say?
I said either the 23rd or the 30th of January.
The 23rd or the 30th?
Yep.
Maybe the last two Thursdays.
Last two
Wednesdays,
Wednesdays.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We're going to shoot for the 23rd.
Okay.
23rd, okay?
Okay, that's settled. Let's adjourn.